The sun was finally reaching the streets of the residential area of Mizutofu. Lights were turned on in the houses. Students were preparing to go to school. Workers were preparing to go provide for their families. Stores were opening up. The routine atmosphere of an ordinary morning. So the inhabitants of this city thought. As they say, happiness lies in ignorance. An expensive car drove on the road to the city center. Without even thinking that directly below it, at a distance of 50 meters in depth, there is a complex of structures. Hole, as its workers like to call it. In addition to the entrance in one of the houses, inside this underground complex there were apartments for 3 people and a work area. The working area consisted of 2 rooms, one of which was divided by bulletproof glass. There was no ventilation. This part of the laboratory had to be completely isolated. From here it was hard and unmercenary to know what time it was in the outside world. The 3 scientists worked here as much as they could, and they themselves tried to stick to their sleep schedules. This complex was relatively small. The main bet in it was secrecy and biohazard to ordinary people. If the heroes find out about this place, they will need to attack carefully. This will give time to destroy the samples that are being worked on here. The door to the room that is divided in half by glass opened, and a man of age about 40 entered inside, with round glasses and a tablet in his hands. Before he could enter, he stared at the samples behind the glass and the tablet fell from his hands. "Karasawa Nishi, come here." He shouted for his fellow scientists. "You must see this." 2 men entered the room with unfinished cups of coffee. "What is it, Anu?" The man named Anu nodded towards the specimens behind the glass. With wide eyes, the scientists carefully placed everything they had in their hands on the table and approached the 2 samples, which were also separated by glass. Finally, the scientist named Karasawa Tomio rubbed his chin with a grin. What was special about what they saw? The main task of this secret complex is the study of quirks, as well as their cultivation. Glass separated scientists and single-celled organisms, in which semblances of quirks were forcibly implanted by injecting human DNA into them. The samples showed growth for the first time in 2 years. The formless black mass glowed faintly with red light and seemed to react to the appearance of the scientists. Slowly approaching the glass, the mass formed blunt-tipped tentacles and tried to break through, but failed. The second sample was red, and was noticeably larger than black one. Instead of being able to move, it began to spread throughout its cell like a plant putting down roots. Boils with a yellowish liquid were visible on its surface. "I'll file a report to Ishii. He will contact All for One," Karasawa stated, and quickly fled the room. Anu got his notebook and furiously started writing on it. The sample OFA got red color and showed huge growth by spreading dash. "I wonder." The third scientist, Nishi, quietly spoke, "Why are All for One and One for All were the only ones to survive?" Felt. The vibrations sent by everything around it were giving it a picture of what happened around. $%. Moving sources of food sent vibrations to one another. The black mass with codename All for One shot its tendrils in their direction, but was blocked by something it could barely see. Then FO felt it. Something pulsing and very close. First instinct was to attack, but it knew that there was something that separated it from the source of the pulse. Felt familiar, almost like a friend. The pulses it gave were calm, with the same interval between them. AFO tried to get to that thing, seeking a way around the obstacle between. Sending vibrations again, it got the picture of surroundings, and found no way to reach the source of the pulses. $%. $%. It had no capability to see, hear or understand anything around it. Instincts were telling to get to the pulse. Suddenly, a huge vibration, nothing like before, shook the AFO and everything around it. $%. Percent. $. It got into a corner, scared for its life, trying to look as small as it could. Vibrations didn't stop, they were shaking everything around the AFO, messing with its picture of the world that it got through vibrations. It couldn't hear or see, but it only needed one thing: the sense of touch. And this very same sense gave it the information that the area was getting very hot. "Stupid heroes!" Karasawa shouted. "Do even realize what are you dash?" The scientist was shot in place. Enforcers of HPSC were flooding the building, getting through the fire of the lab. An explosion destroyed the glass. Sensing no obstacle in its way, AFO quickly fled through it. A set of vibrations were getting close, and the black mass stood still. More sources of food walked through, and when they stopped moving, the black mass slipped through the door. The vibrations now weren't so strong, and it could see its destination out. Through a crack in walls, it slipped into a ground. With slow yet steady progress, it continued to move through the ground when it found a new crack. Sewers. The black mass felt small vibrations everywhere, and one was coming its way. Fo stood still, trying to fool potential prey. A row of rats was running away in some direction, away from underground explosions. AFO sprang on one of it, capturing it with tendrils. The rat was screaming for a few moments, before it was split apart and consumed by black mass. Feeling more strength than before, AFO continued its way through the sewers. Life was not fair for one Izuku Midoriya. Being born without a quirk in this world, it seemed, was akin to creating a target on your back. He was ridiculed not only for his quirkless status, but his undying wish to become a hero despite such handicap. "Go take a swan dive off the roof." These harsh words felt breaking, yet hit strangely close to heart. I decided not to care what anyone else says," Izuku reminded to himself. "I will become a hero. The final year of middle school will be the end of this way of life. He will show everyone that quirk is not everything that defines a person." Izuku entered a tunnel under a bridge. The area felt very quiet. Izuku didn't even hear birds for some reason. He continued on his way, looking around. Yes, it felt strangely quiet. His footsteps were echoing through the tunnel. Hearing a ruckus, Izuku sharply turned around in slight panic. But seeing who it was, sighed in relief. "Just a cat." He smiled and sat down, calling it. The cat approached without hesitation. Izuku smiled, feeling some of his frustration disappearing. Until black, sharp tendrils didn't shout of the cat, impaling Izuku in several places. Before he could move, the cat pounced, knocking Izuku on the ground and continued to stab him. Izuku started to trash around, trying to get the strange cat away, but it held tight when he opened his eyes. An unknown ceiling. Strange. That's the only thing he could think about. "Where am I?" Boy slowly got up and looked around. The room around him was dark, and yet he could see everything around him perfectly. It was filled with posters and figures of some bulky person. "All Might," he read from one of the posters. Yes, now the boy remembered. He was a hero, right? This person's name was All Might. Wait. The boy froze for a moment. He could remember someone who was All Might, but who am I? Approaching a small mirror, he took a good look on himself. Green hair, big green eyes, freckles, quite young. A strange feeling made the boy clutch his head and crouch. It was not pain, but it was still slightly torturing, as if trying to move a dead limb. Forcing it down, the boy looked into the mirror once more. "Izuku Midoriya. That's my name," he breathed out. "And I want to become a hero." Those are the only things that he could remember. Everything else was blank, and trying to reach it only brought this uncomfortable feeling back. Izuku, not seeing any sense in staying there, left the house, only to be met with a scene of destruction. The area around him was just as dark. Something was blocking the sun, and even from his point of view he couldn't see it. Whatever it was way too high. Some buildings, even some of high-rises he could see in distance, were burning. An explosion happened somewhere, judging by the sound. Izuku jumped from 4th floor and got to the road. He could see abandoned cars were everywhere, some still burning, and a lot of blood. And yet, he couldn't see any bodies. Despite amnesia, Izuku could understand that the scene was unnatural. Only one question crossed his mind. What happened here? What happened here? Izuku looked around, not believing in what he saw. His wide eyes were jumping from one direction to another, seeking something that in his mind was normal. At least, a general idea of what the world around him should look like, which he has not forgotten. Izuku fell and clutched his head in panic. This is a dream, right? I'll wake up and remember everything. He pinched himself hard. Wake up, damn it. A new, strange feeling reacted to Izuku's distress. It felt like a calm wave of chill air, coming from somewhere deep inside him, and spreading through his body, calming him. Panic quickly disappeared, and Izuku found strength to stand up. He had no choice. I guess I have to figure everything out myself. Izuku approached an abandoned car that looked mostly undamaged. It was bent in a few places, the result of hitting something, and it couldn't be a simple car accident. Dents were in different places, and there were no other cars close enough that would hit it. On the ground next to it was a stain of blood. Izuku crouched to wipe it with shaky hands. Almost dry. Whatever happened here? It wasn't that recent, but at the same time he wasn't sleeping for weeks either. Before he stood up, Izuku noticed something strange on the ground. He looked closer. A small something was spreading through blood. It was very small, thin and red in color, like a vein. Izuku looked to see the other end of this vein, but it was going far beyond his vision. Whatever, it wasn't important now. He needed leave this place. There was no sun and no moon. There wasn't even a single cloud. Something was blocking the sky. Some giant construct, and he couldn't see neither the beginning nor the end of it. It had to be built somehow, right? How long did it take to build this? Izuku was certain he didn't sleep for that long. His gaze lowered back to the street. Beside occasional fire, they were lit by street lamps. Someone had to work to make sure these lamps work. So, wherever he was, it was inside a construction that was most likely built by people, and someone has to work in power plants to keep the electricity. Which brings an obvious conclusion. There were people somewhere. Now, he needed a way to leave the city and find them. Reach them. Clear objective, but easier said than done. How will I do it, though? He had no idea where he was. He needed to find a direction. Izuku got into car, which wasn't locked. With all the debris lying around the road, using it would be problematic. Map. He rummaged through the car and found a phone that most likely had a map installed. And it was password locked. Damn it. I can't stay abandoned here. Slightly frustrated, Izuku got to the trunk. There has to be some first aid kit and maybe even a map, right? Izuku tried to open it, expecting holding the lid in his hands. He noticed that he barely felt it in his arms. Is this my quirk? Did I have some kind of enhancement quirk? Damn it, not remembering anything sucked. At least now he knew what his quirk was. Maybe that was the reason he could jump from 4th floor without even thinking. Why can I see in dark so nicely then? His powers were a mystery. Maybe it was not an enhancement quirk, but some form of adaptation quirk. Izuku took the lid in one hand and waved with it. Yes, it was too light. Better test the quirk now. Wait, no, he needed to check the trunk first. Once more, he couldn't find any map around here. That meant that he had to go in direction away from what looked to be the center of the city. New tasks then. Get some food, a backpack and start going. And, of course, test his quirk. Izuku looked around to make sure nobody was around and readied his fist. He was gathering his strength, and noticed that his hand started turning black and something red was glowing inside. What got his attention, however? Why are my clothes turning black as well? What the hell is my quirk? He punched the car, expecting a good dent. What he didn't expect was for car to fly a good dozen of meters away. Whoa! Definitely an enhancing quirk dash. And crash into building, making Izuku cringe from the amount of noise he made. Izuku immediately froze and listened to his surroundings in hopes he didn't bring too much attention on himself. Hearing nothing, Izuku sighed in relief, only to widen his eyes as he heard a cacophony of shrieks and groans. With wide eyes and his mouth agape, Izuku quickly ran towards the apartment where he woke up as fast as he could, leaving cracks on the road. Once inside, he locked the door and leaned against it. For some reason he expected himself to be tired from such a sprint. He instinctively started breathing harder, but quickly realized he wasn't winded at all. Izuku quietly got to a window in the kitchen and peeked on the street. Something was already walking around the car he accidentally sent into someone's house. Then a second person appeared, then third. And then they just didn't stop coming, it seemed. Izuku noticed that they were moving quite strangely. Either limping, using all four limbs, some even crawling. Their covered in blood faces were full of rage, but they didn't show any intellect. Some had claws, some looked like reptiles and other animals. Izuku could see at least one person that looked way too much like a hero, with spheres of fire rotating around him. Considering how close he was to others, he was burning their flesh with his fire, to which they barely responded. What the hell? Ing the lid to be heavy. He applied some force, but in result tore the lid from fasteners. They looked like humans but certainly didn't behave that way. Some of those creatures were different from others. They were so ugly Izuku felt like throwing up. On their heads they had boils large enough for Izuku to notice even from such distance, that covered almost half of their faces. One of their arms were deformed. The original, relatively small human hand was broken with bones sticking out of the skin. However, that human arm was just a small part of a larger hand, made of red flesh and had large claws. The chilling feeling washed over Izuku again, calming him down. Izuku got away from the window with a sigh. With all the destruction, blood and lack of any bodies around, there was only one logical choice. I should avoid these things. Hiding inside, Izuku decided to check the apartment again. It wasn't empty. The fridge was still working, and the cupboards were scarcely filled with food. Returning to the room where he woke up, he carefully looked through the desk. He found one more phone, but once again it was locked with a password. The same with PC. That only left him with school belongings, and a backpack he needed. There, among the notes and books, he found a burnt journal that was signed. Midoriya Izuku. This is mine. He was sure of it. That was his name after all. Right. Izuku looked around once again, and saw similar notes on shelves. This room was mine. So it was his home after all. Did he live alone? There was another room, so the answer was most likely no. He didn't even want to go and check it. Despite the strange chilling feeling that calmed him, he was afraid to know for sure that he, at some point, wasn't alone. If they were fine, they would be there when he woke up. What happened to them? Did they turn? Don't think about it. Don't. Izuku sighed and sat near the window in his room. Only the sounds of working fridge and a crowd of human-like creatures were interrupting the silence. He got a knife. Obviously, it wouldn't be way too useful in a fight. Certainly not better than his own hands. However, one strange moment was worth examining for sure. Izuku clenched his fist as if preparing to punch, and felt how his hand felt stronger with every moment. Once at its peak, its color turned into black with slight red glowing beneath it. There! For some reason, not just his hand, but the sleeve of his t-shirt was turning black along with his arm. So I didn't just see things. It did change color. Was it because his clothes were made from his hair or... Ouch! Izuku tried to slightly cut the t-shirt. And felt it. He felt everything t-shirt touched. Once again with wide eyes, Izuku was at loss of what his quirk is supposed to be. This shirt is part of me. This is nonsense. Izuku ran through his notes on quirks, but all of them were straightforward. Their concept was obvious and understandable. But his strengthening powers that were on level of people who trained their quirks. Perfect eyesight even in darkness. Chilling, calming feeling. And now even his clothes were part of Izuku. What was his quirk? What will he say once people ask him? Why didn't I leave any notes on my quirk here? Izuku heard an explosion and quietly approached the window. He noticed that those creatures were quickly getting to the area where the explosion occurred. After waiting a minute, Izuku got his backpack with some food and left the place. The streets of the residential area weren't exactly hard to navigate. The buildings weren't high enough to block the view of the city center. However, walking such big distances wasn't exactly pleasant. Now the area didn't feel as quiet. Izuku started to pay a lot of attention to every sound around him. Since there was no visible sky, he couldn't understand what time it was. How long was he walking exactly? Minutes? Hours? He should have taken the phone, this way he would at least know the time. HRK. Izuku widened his eyes and turned to the source of the sound, ready to run. In a few meters away from him was one of those human creatures. It had no legs, but was still trying to reach for Izuku, making barely hearable noises. Why wasn't it crouching towards him though? He saw some of them doing this already. The chilling feeling calmed Izuku down again. He really needed to understand the reason behind it. But not now. Izuku slightly approached this creature from behind. The fingers of the creature turned into large blades, but Izuku was far enough from the thing to not be in danger. Is it this person's quirk? Or is it something that is common for those creatures? It didn't look like the claws of those strange bulkier creatures, so it was a quirk then. Now he could see the reason the creature was immobile. Its lower body was rooted by those red veins Izuku saw earlier. Izuku was about to get away from it when... Devour. Izuku felt pain spreading through his body. Or not. Was it even pain? The feeling was strange. As if he hungry and had a bellyache because of it. Only to feel this bellyache with his whole body. Izuku fell on his floor. Devour. What's happening? Something inside him was trying to get out. Something he couldn't understand yet. This creature on the floor. It looked so defenseless despite the claws. So weak. What is happening to me? Devour. The creature was trashing in place, still trying to get to him. Izuku succumbed to the feeling he had no idea how to resist. He watched with horror as black tendrils shot out of his body, reaching the creature on the ground and breaking it. It was still trying to resist, but in a matter of seconds it was wholly absorbed into Izuku. Izuku couldn't adverb his eyes from now a wet spot on the ground that was at one point a human. Then a flash in his eyes blinded him for a brief moment and he shut his eyes. Could L E close T ******************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************** asterisk your phi asterisk asterisk D. G asterisk TO asterisk T. Urgent news. A red UE started dash. Run. Arg. Strange visions filled Izuku's mind. He saw a woman, a house close to sea, a newborn son. Urgent news about something red. Dreams. Panic. Izuku concentrated on them, and felt like he could find them somewhere in his head. Like he could access them at any point. No, those weren't just visions. It was memory. Memories of the person that was in front of him. It was corrupted, damaged, like a disc that was thrown out of the window and then plugged inside. He could see glimpses of it, but not the whole picture. When Izuku opened his eyes, he stared at his arms, which now looked like they have grown a layer of black, unruly flesh, and all his fingers turned into large blades, almost half-meter long. It was the same power that the absorbed creature has shown. Enhancement quirk, my ass. What the hell is my quirk? Izuku stared at the place where he found the creature once more. There was no sign of it. Only red veins spreading through the blood, absorbing it. Izuku covered his eyes and gave out a hysterical laugh. So I actually did it. I killed it. He had a family. Could see his son in his memories and dash. Izuku already expected that chilling feeling to calm him down. He hoped it would dull everything he felt at the moment. What he didn't expect was for the feeling to be several times stronger. What was chilling and pleasant now was freezing him from inside. Izuku's face lost any signs of emotions, and his eyes lost its bleaks. It didn't look like a face of an alive human being. He stood up and stared at blood. Whatever it was not a human. This feeling was not going away. That creature left a bad taste in his mouth. Literally. For some reason, Izuku knew that a normal human would feel different. How do I know this? These creatures were hyper-aggressive and could survive loss of half of their bodies. And they could use quirks. In his emotionless state, Izuku knew he will have to kill them in self-defense. Luckily, he had a new set of tools for it. Izuku stared at his new arms. He flexed his fingers a bit, giving up the idea of figuring out his quirk. He will have to find out about his abilities on the way. At least for now. It seemed that in addition to everything he could do before, now he knew he could absorb those human-like creatures and imitate their quirks. With a mental signal, the black flesh on his arms retracted into his body along with the large claws. Now his hand looked like normal. Or more human-like. Izuku wasn't sure what to think. What am I? Hot wind and growls in distance didn't answer. The further from the center he got, the more undamaged the buildings were. Heavy fog hid Izuku quite nicely, but so it did for the enemies. He had to rely on his hearing quite a lot, just as those creatures. Speaking about those creatures. With his giant claws, Izuku impaled the creature in front of him that tried to bite him. Its jaw was noticeably big, and big sharp teeth were trying to reach the boy. Black tendrils shot in its body, impaling it and dragging it right into Izuku's body. Aargg. It is the third one so far. Izuku had yet to return his emotions, which meant that he didn't feel bad for killing them. He turned the claws off and tried to feel any changes in his body. The quirk was quite weak. Those big teeth weren't that good. At least, absorbing those things increases his overall strength. Once again, the memories were damaged. The man was working in an office, and the glimpses of his life looked uninteresting. Killing them was easy, but they made way too much noise. It might be dangerous. Suddenly, Izuku heard something. He sharply turned to the direction of the sound origin, only to find some bricks falling from a building. He narrowed his eyes. He felt like he was being watched by something. Izuku tried to ignore the feeling and continued on his way through the city. Biohazard warning. A destroyed concrete barricade was barely blocking the road. Izuku narrowed his lifeless eyes on it and looked back to where the city center should be. I should be close then. No one would put the signs too close to the center of the danger. He continued on his way. Shrieks and groans became rare, and mostly somewhere far. These creatures had a nice sight, but obviously were attracted mostly to sound. Explosions, falling buildings and so on. There, on the edge of the city, there was little to attract their attention. Which was the reason why a lone human-like creature was banging on a door of someone's home was so noticeable to the boy. Izuku crouched and tried to go unnoticed behind a few cars. He could see nicely in the dark, so he avoided all the objects on the ground that could make too much noise. The creature broke the door, and he heard someone scream that quickly disappeared. At that moment, something clicked in Izuku's head. He stood up, forming the claws on his hands on the way to the creature that tried to get through the door. It didn't notice Izuku yet. Time to change that, then. Izuku slightly leaned his body and started scratching the road on the way, creating a rather unpleasant sound. The creature reacted, turned to Izuku and started running towards him. When it was close, Izuku impaled it with his claws, just like he did with the last one, but the neck of the creature lengthened and he managed to bite off a part of Izuku's shoulder. Izuku's returned the favor as he forced his impaled hand up, splitting the creature in two and absorbing it into his body with black tendrils. He glanced at his injured shoulder, only to find it already healed. A new set of broken memories distracted Izuku from his shoulder, but he quickly discarded them. They were useless anyway. The creature's quirk was an ability to stretch their limbs. With a mental signal, Izuku's claws disappeared, but the hand didn't return its normal color. He just changed the claw's quirk to the stretching quirk. Izuku took one of his hands with another one and pulled. Instead of tearing his arm off, the hand only became longer. Might be useful. Turning off the black flesh of his arms, he approached the home where he heard a scream. He knocked on the broken door that stood close to the broken frame. The entrance was barricaded. Hello. Nobody answered. Anyone here? I dealt with that thing. No answer yet. I'll be going then. Sorry for disturbing. Wait. Izuku stopped. The barricade made from furniture started to move, and woman's face appeared from behind it. She looked to be in her earlier 30s. Seeing a normal face awakened something in Izuku. The freezing feeling disappeared, and life returned to his face. Izuku had no idea how this freezing feeling worked, how it turned on and off. But one thing was certain. The emotions returned. Thank you for dealing with that thing. The woman expressed her gratitude, though still a bit wary of Izuku. We are lucky it didn't have a strong quirk, or we would be dead. Izuku glanced at her. We. Somewhat unsure smile appeared on Izuku's face as he tried to ignore the fact that he killed one of those poor souls once again. Once the emotions returned, he couldn't help but feel bad. Why, you are welcome. He didn't move towards the barricade to not scare this woman. Izuku was sleeping through whatever happened here, but obviously she wasn't. She went through this all. Izuku's eyes expressed worry, but he couldn't help but ask her one simple thing. Can you tell me what happened around here? Woman's eyes slightly widened, but then she narrowed them. What do you mean? Izuku looked around in case a new creature appeared. I kinda slept through everything. Woman stood agape for a moment. Slept through. Izuku nodded, understanding her confusion. The woman shook her head. He saved us, but he still might be dangerous. Even if he is just a kid. She looked back into the house. At someone hiding below a table. But at the same time he saved us. He didn't force himself into the house and almost left. I guess I'll risk this time. Though I still need to be cautious. The woman sighed. Come inside. Izuku looked around. Everything was lit by candles, but he could see a violet light behind one of the doors. He was really glad that the desire to absorb the creatures wasn't working right now. The woman led him to a dining room when someone blocked their way. Who are you? Shoo. Hannah, don't be so loud. The woman tried to shout while whispering. A girl in slightly dirty dress stood in the hallway, as if protecting the room from Izuku. Her expression was full of confidence, and she even breathed out some smoke from her nose, which added to her terrifying presence. Izuku smiled softly. I'm Midoriya Izuku. And you? Ha-dash. Hannah, the girl almost shouted again. Hannah is my daughter, the woman turned to Izuku, and then back to the girl. I don't want him next to her. I can protect myself, but she can't. Go to your room for a few minutes. Quietly. The girl sighed and she breathed out some smoke. Yes, Mom. Tea? No, thanks. The woman nodded and got a cup for herself. So, Midoriya Izuku. Well, that's my name. I think. Woman sipped her tea with a raised eyebrow. You think? That's somehow connected to me sleeping through everything. Well then, supposedly Izuku Midoriya. My name is Izumi Owagawa. Nice to meet you, I guess. Thank you for dealing with that carrier. Carrier? The woman took another sip. You really don't know anything, do you? Izuku only shook his head. I don't remember anything. I just woke up in a home with no memories. I only knew that my name was Izuku Midoriya, and that I wanted to become a hero, and even that came to me when I looked into a mirror. The woman slightly widened her eyes. Everything was dark, so I assumed it was a night outside. When I got out, I was met by ruins everywhere. Izuku accessed the memories of the first creature he killed. I only know about Red. Red, something that started not so long ago. That must be Red Flu. Izuku looked at her, expecting a continuation. It happened maybe 4 days ago. As you must have noticed, it is quite hard to track time here. All of a sudden, a lot of military started flying around with helicopters and jets. Some heavy machinery put the biohazard barricades everywhere they could, not letting any cars to move. Everyone was mostly confused. The radio and TV told everyone to stay home while those bastards from the government were doing something around the city. But then they came. Those human-like creatures. And what do you mean by stressing this, then? They were called carriers. They were infected with some red parasites that takes over neural system. But to not cause panic among those who had yet to encounter the carriers, the parasite was called a red flu. And by focusing so much on, then? Well, think about Midoriya. Military appears, starts to block the city, tried to calm down everyone while they are sealing everyone inside, and only then. Sorry, I'm a little loud. Only then the threat starts to appear. The government responded way too quickly, don't you think? And they didn't stop there. The construction that blocks the sky. Izumi nodded with frustration on her face. It was during the first evening, mostly done by Cementos and his hero agency, with help of the most of heroes, island and military orgs from the closest countries. Everyone responded so quickly. It is a dome that seals the entire city in case the parasite can spread through air. Wait, you said heroes helped to build it. They helped to get people on the other side, obviously, but mostly stayed away from the places where the parasite was strong. But why? They aren't immune to it. Imagine one of those creatures will All Might's or Endeavor power. Izuku felt a shiver running down his spine. But how can you get infected with this thing? I don't know really, Izumi answered. Through bites. And body liquid. Scratches. There should be some form of a contact, obviously. Izuku's eyes were widening with every word. Wait. How long does it take to, turn into a carrier once you get infected? Izumi's eyes narrowed at Izuku. Why do you ask? Did that thing got you? Izuku hesitated to answer. Why yes it did. I don't want to put you in a risk, so I'll leave then. Izumi sighed when Izuku stood up. That was quite fast. I think I can trust him a bit more, she thought. Wait. Takes from seconds to a few minutes from what I know. If you feel perfectly fine. Then I guess your quirk helps you fight the parasite. That's also possible. Izuku sighed in relief. That actually could be true. With the ability to absorb those creatures, clearly his organism was stronger than the parasite. The first contact, the first absorbed carrier, was hours ago. How do you know all of this? Izuku couldn't help but to ask. He showed him her phone. Social media, duh. People wrote about it everywhere. There's no connection now though. Izuku covered his face in thoughts. Well, since you know so much, can I ask you a question? You can, but be ready not to receive an answer. You told me about those carriers, people that are infected. But do you know something about? I didn't think of a name. They looked just like carriers but had large boils, much larger than those that carriers have. One of their arms is broken, and is mostly replaced by one big limb with meaty claws. Carriers have differences, mostly based on their quirks. Those, on the other hand, looked very similar to each other. How do I put it? You can differentiate one carrier from another, but it's hard to do the same with those bulkier, strange carriers with claws. The woman stopped drinking her tea. You gave a good description if they are really so similar to each other, but I don't know. I never saw one like the one you described. That's bad. The parasite couldn't mutate so fast, could it? How would I know it? Izuku looked directly in Izumi's eyes. You can't stay here. If those things evolve so fast, who knows what will happen next time they see you? Don't worry, I'll beat them. Izumi patted her bicep with a forced grin. Izuku wasn't convinced. I can't leave you here. Why didn't you beat the one at the entrance then? I had to take care of him. The bastard kept stretching like damn rubber. Wherever I hit him, his limbs would just return to normal in seconds. Even then, how dash? Midoriya, I worked with harsh environments. Survival was literally my job. I already have a room with ultraviolet lamps ready to help me grow food. The local stores still have some food and water in them. There's still electricity. We will wait this out. Even then, I can't leave you here. I saved you from that carrier, but if you stay here, that it means that my work isn't done. I will help you. Think about it. They closed the sky in case the parasite can spread through air. The water sources are next, right? If they haven't cut them off already, the water in stores will end at some point. You won't be able to grow anything then dash. Stop, Izumi's hands were shaking. What do you propose we do then? The streets might look empty, but it is only because most of the carriers is either deep in the city or at the exits which are heavily guarded by military. And make no fucking mistake, those places are crowded with carriers. I'm sure of it. You want me to lead my daughter to certain death? I might get to the military since I have a strengthening quirk, and I will also assume that you can get through. But my daughter has a fire-breathing quirk, damn it, and she didn't train it at all. Izuku wanted to respond but was at loss. She had a point. Staying there could potentially help them with staying alive, but it was temporary. So, what if we make a hole in the dome? You are joking, right? No. I may not look like much, but I'm strong. Like really strong. I once accidentally tore a lid from a trunk of an abandoned car, and I barely even felt it in my single hand. And, well, I accidentally threw a car into a building. And I have these. Izuku turned the claws on, startling the woman by their size. With the strength and those claws, the cutting power should be gigantic. You still don't understand what's wrong, right? Izumi finally finished her cup of tea. Midoriya, there is a reason why this concrete wall was built. I might be, quite rightfully, mad at them for sealing my daughter and me inside, but I do understand why it was built in the first place. She was right, of course. Damn it. Why everything had to be so hard. He couldn't leave them with the stretching carrier banging on their door. He had to help them. And now he felt the same. He couldn't abandon them. Leaving them there would certainly mean their death. He wanted to become a hero, damn it. What kind of hero leaves people to die? The chilling feeling returned, and calmed Izuku once again. Damn it, it was useful, even if he didn't understand it at all. Another strange part of his quirk. Izuku narrowed his eyes and looked at Izumi again. Then, how about this? I make a hole in the dome and let you two escape. You will warn the military on the other side about the hole. At the same time, I will stay near the hole, and seal it with every debris I can find and stay there until the military arrives. I will make sure nothing will get through it. Izumi tried to sip her tea, but the cup was empty. You really can't let us stay here, can you? Izuku smiled at the woman. Of course. What kind of hero will leave people to die when he can help them? The woman chuckled sadly. The ones that are outside that dome. Well, I'm still inside, right? The woman smiled and closed her eyes. Right. They sat in comfortable silence for a few moments until Izumi finally broke it. Fine. Your win. Give me some time to prepare. When Izumi left, Izuku sat down on a floor of the dining room, close to some candles. At this point, his weapons were the tendrils, the claws, the sharp teeth which were a joke, and his own strength. What he was interested, however, was the stretching quirk. There should be a way to use them with other quirks. Izuku sat down and tried to reach his body through his mind. He started to imagine it. Blades of the claws. Power of his body. Tendrils. Stretching quirk. Combined together for a bigger efficiency and longer range. Success. Izuku opened his eyes and stared at his arm. Just as always when turning them on, the arm had a layer of black flesh on it. The fingers were replaced by 3 blades, made for grabbing from big distances. Izuku pulled the arm with another one, stretching it. I'll name it the whip. Izuku retracted the whip with a sigh. Inside looked so untouched by the recent events. He glanced at the candles around. Their warm light made him feel relaxed and forget about the outside world for a moment. The closed curtains didn't block all the light coming from street lamps. Breath in, breath out. This home sure was cozy, if not for the rapidly changing situation outside. He could imagine someone staying there for a long time. He for sure wouldn't decline an invitation. After he leaves this dome and gets to a different city, he will need to find a place for himself as well. Izuku's eyes lowered to the floor. Even this thought sent a strong feeling of loneliness on him. Home for himself. In other words, a home for one. However, even considering the loneliness, home is a place for a rest. He wasn't that tired, just mentally exhausted. The last few hours were quite hectic after all. Waking up, learning, hopefully, his name, only to find the city in ruins. Giant dome covers the sky, and the fact that he can breathe is honestly surprising. The fire creates a lot of smoke that can't leave the dome. One more reason to hurry and help Izumi get out of the city. Then, he met the carriers, the bulkier carriers, and started absorbing those that were walking alone, and got their quirks. On the road, the calming feeling from inside shut down all his emotions, and they only returned when he met Izumi. It was way too much for a quirk. Even if not as a student, he will have to contact some hero school to help him at least understand himself. Wait. Izuku put a finger to his chin. What will people think when they get to know I can absorb quirks? That is a valid concern, even if it was quite early for such thoughts. Still, it was much healthier for him to think ahead about better times, and not about the complete destruction around him. He doesn't want to get out of here with a gray hair after all. How will I explain, for example, fire manipulation? If I get it from one of the carriers, of course. I can't. He has a lot of abilities even now, but they all can be described as body manipulation quirk or something close to it. Ability to create blades, extend limbs, see in the dark. All of them can be put into this category. They were physical, using fire, creating ice, manipulating water, telekinesis, or flying. If he ever gets those abilities, they will be way too noticeable. He can't tell anyone that he can absorb quirks. For 3 main reasons. First, it could be a simple imitation of a quirk, and not him absorbing the quirks. Second, people will be scared of him stealing what makes them unique. Their powers. Third, if they ever find out that he literally eats his victims to get new powers, he will be put in jail most likely. He doesn't know the laws concerning self-defense against the infected carriers, after all. Every new unique power that he can't explain with body manipulation, quirk, will be the same as publicly raising his kill count. In case they know about his absorbing power, of course. But even if they don't, people will start asking questions that he can't give answers to. Can I even do it, though? Is it really me using their quirks or just my body imitating them? Hey, Midoriya! His little trance was interrupted by Izumi showing at the door. She looked exactly the same, and quite honestly, it didn't look as if she was preparing for the trip to the edge of the dome. Yes, Ms. Oagawa. Can I help you? Listen, when I asked you to give me some time, I was a bit excited, so to say. When a possibility to leave the dome presented itself, I just couldn't help it. However, a few minutes pass and now I feel tired as shit. I just returned from my last outing to the closest shop when you came and dealt with the carrier that followed me. So, I need some time to rest. Izuku nodded. Oh, of course. You should rest if you feel tired. We are not in a rush after all. I mean we are, but a few hours of rest won't hurt. I think. Izumi nodded, but she still didn't trust Izuku much. What are you going to do during that time? She asked him, looking away but still glancing at him. The worst thing she could do was to fall asleep with a stranger kid in her house. Izuku glanced at the window. I guess I'll go out. Scout a bit. Deal with any carrier I see so the route will be safer. Izumi nodded. Sending him out will be much calmer for her than for him to stay. He seemed to be a nice kid, but she barely knew him for more than a few minutes. And his claws were quite frightening if she were honest. If what he said about his strength was true, then she knew she won't be able to defeat him. If a carrier breaks into the house, she will deal with it. But with him, caution is the best way. Caution, patience, and tactfulness. She really liked him, but she couldn't let her emotions decide the live of her dearest girl. I see. Be careful out there. Oh, wait. Izuku was about to stand up when Izumi approached him. Take these. Wristwatch. Izuku turned to her without saying a word. Return in 2 hours. That should be enough for me and you. Izuku nodded and stood up. Got it. I'll return by then. If anything happens, Izuku furrowed his brows. I can't just ask them to shout for me. This will be dangerous. We'll think of a way to attract your attention. Don't worry. Izuku glanced at her, unsure. I told you not to worry, Izumi repeated. We will be fine. The boy sighed and nodded again. I hope so. I'll go then. Izuku went to the front door but stopped. How can I get out? The entrance is barricaded. I'll show you the way, Izumi said and went upstairs. When Izuku left through a window on the second floor, Izumi decided it was time to have a slight rest. She felt bad for being so cautious about the boy, but she didn't know a better way to deal with strangers in such times. He did nothing but good things to her so far. Saved her and her daughter, and now gave them hope to leave this place. Chance to have a life. Ha! The boy must really have a heart of a hero. To do so much in so little time. She hoped that he will make a great hero someday. Izumi reached her bedroom where Hana should be. Hana. The girl was sitting by a window with wide eyes and her hand covering her mouth. The mother quietly approached her daughter and kneeled. She was in an alarm mode already. Hana, what happened? The girl pointed at the hand that covered her mouth. Don't worry, you can talk. We are not in danger here. Hana finally removed her hand. I saw something in the window. Something. I don't know. They were, bigger than those, bad people. And had a large claw, all of them. It is big. They were jumping from rooftop to rooftop. She pointed in general direction of their movement, even though the window was not visible behind curtains. Izumi's eyes widened. Large claw. And all of them had one. Are they the ones Midoriya boy was talking about? They didn't see me. And I kept silent just like you taught me. And they are gone now, I think. Izumi patted her head. Good girl. You did everything perfectly, even though I remember telling you not to look outside. The girl was slowly calming down, while Izumi, on the other hand, was getting more and more restless. She looked in Izuku's general direction. I hope nothing happens to you. Not after you gave us so much hope, damn it. Lifeless. That sounded like the best way to describe his surroundings. It contrasted greatly with the city that was still on fire in the distance. Honestly, sometimes I don't want to see in dark so nicely just to not see the city around me. The area of Izumi's house was almost on city's edge, so there was no chaos. Almost no cars, no blood. Either people that lived there were close enough to the edge to escape, or they ran towards the city once they got infected. There were no red veins as well. It was just silent. He didn't know what to expect from this place. Now that he felt the warmth of a house with people living it in, returning here felt much more unpleasant. Now he had something to compare it with. And, in addition to this, his emotions returned. He walked without them most of the time, but now it felt like a gust of hot wind could put him on edge. "'Kay, pull yourself together. You are immune to the parasite, luckily. You can heal if you absorb the carriers. And you are strong, remember. Remember how you tore the lid from a car's trunk. If something happens, that chill will calm me down again. And you have giant claws. And the whip. What possibly can be dangerous for you?" Izuku shook his head and looked forward. According to the map that Izumi showed him, the closest edge of the dome should be somewhere on the west. First, he will walk around the house to find anyone dangerous, and then move westwards. His steps were echoing, and the breathing sounded so loud that he thought that the carriers would hear it from another street. In surroundings like this, any sound would alert a neighborhood. Damn it. Just for protection, Izuku activated the claws. The silence was deafening. At least he was quite far away from Izumi's house. If he messes up something, it won't be a problem to them. Only to him. The silence wasn't even the worst part. Fog was. There could be something lurking in the fog close to him, swarming around him. And he wouldn't even notice it. The road so far looks safe. Look. But was that a fact? Izuku stopped. Looking around gave no results, obviously. Beside his breathing, The only noises he could hear were incredibly distant, miles and miles away. He looked at the claws. Should I do it? Should he attract some attention in case he missed a carrier? He sure as hell didn't want to. Will you risk their lives just because you don't want to fight the infected, you damn idiot? Breath in. Breath out. Those infected are in pain. They can't be cured. You saw how damaged their memories were. If memories are damaged, then the brains are damaged. By absorbing them, I will free them. I will help them. And I will sure as hell won't let them touch Ms. Owagawa and little Hana. I will get these two to safety. And for this, pull yourself together and clear the path. Izuku made a slash on the road, creating rather unpleasant, almost metallic sound. The echoes sounded, which only added to the lifelessness of the area. The sound was not too loud, but it should attract some attention. I did it. Now he listened. The fog was still quite thick, but it was enough to at least spot an enemy when it will start approaching. His eyes were jumping from one direction to another. He was turning around every few seconds, looking at every corner. Where? The fog didn't help at all. From where? His eyes caught something on the edge of the fog. It might be a simple piece of trash flying in the wind, but would piece of trash attract his attention? He honestly didn't know. Izuku held his breath. He slowly started going in direction of the object when he heard rustling from behind. Izuku turned around and slashed with the claws at the same time, just in case something was already close. Only to find nothing. Something blocked light from a street lamp in a distance. Izuku would miss it if he blinked. He felt more and more at edge, staring at the fog. What's going on? Why aren't they attacking? Are those even carriers? Could it be a wary group of survivors? What the hell was it even alive? That might be paper trash rustling against the road in a distance. It could be a bird that flew close to a street lamp and blocked it for a moment. The infected would attack him already. They are stupid and are attracted to noise. Alarm. That's the only feeling that didn't go away during the trip. He felt like he was being watched again. Come on, stupid quirk, what are you waiting for? The chilling wave spread through Izuku, calming him. Took you long enough. Izuku straightened and looked around again. He noticed no new disturbances so far. Then, maybe he should try again. The sounds create an echo, and if the infected use it to navigate to their target, then they might have got lost. He couldn't take any chances. Izuku started going up the street, scratching his claws against the road. A few minutes with no results almost made him stop when a screech of rage echoed through the streets, and now calm Izuku tried to find the source. Finally, hearing something was much better than imagining enemies around him. The source was approaching, but very strangely, as if the carrier was jumping somewhere. Izuku stood ready. The echo made it harder to locate the carrier, but even if that thing will hurt him, absorbing it will heal Izuku instantly. He knew this much. The only problem was being spooked by a sudden attack from behind, and even with that his quirk will help him by calming him down. The screech of rage turned into a scream that was approaching very fast. Too fast. Where is it? The scream approaching from an unknown direction is fucking terrifying by itself. Just where dash? Something landed next to Izuku. Dust settled only to reveal a carrier. Izuku prepared to attack, but then widened his eyes. What? The body of the carrier was broken from the impact. If it had an enhancing quirk that allowed it to jump on big heights, the landing would be easy. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Broken carrier found Izuku with its eyes and tried to reach him. It made a low, barely audible whimper while raising its shaking, broken hand towards Izuku. He looked no older than him as well. Carrier's fingers became longer, but even then Izuku still stood a good distance away. Wait, its fingers became longer. If that's the quirk of that person, then... Izuku's eyes were getting bigger and bigger with every second. With his mouth agape, and he turned to the direction of where the carrier came from. Wait. How did it cover this much distance, then? Izuku looked again at the carrier, examining it. He wanted nothing more than to fall on his butt and clutch his head. Someone threw that carrier at me. Pained whimpers of the young carrier reached Izuku's ears. The nails were falling off the hand that it used to crawl towards Izuku. Or, to be accurate, tried to use to crawl towards Izuku. Who, and for what reason? Who would do such a thing? Ignoring the carrier, Izuku stood ready just in case if there was another carrier approaching. The scream wasn't that quiet after all. And, well, he couldn't ignore the possibility of another carrier being thrown at him. Pained whimpers were distracting him way too much. Green-haired boy sighed shakily. Like snakes, black tendrils started slithering from Izuku's body. With eyes full of pity, Izuku commanded the tendrils to wrap around the poor creature. "I'll free you from your pain." Nap. Broken in two, the defenseless carrier was absorbed into Izuku within moments. Right after that instant, Izuku crouched and clutched his head. What do we have? GLPM. Why boduias birokin? Why itichinko yusen beomir? Enjoying. Useful. Tailed. GLP. As a gift. Big green teary eyes. A boy stands with his fists ready to protect. Vision shifts slightly to the side to reveal spiky blonde hair. Izuku stood frozen with wide eyes. This was the strangest memory he managed to witness so far. The thoughts felt like a constant flow of emotions, but then was the last part. Clear as the day. I saw myself. With his fists ready, he stood in front of the boy, protecting him. When the realization hit him, Izuku tried to access the memory again. Big green teary eyes. A boy stands with his fists ready to protect. Vision shifts slightly to the side to reveal spiky blonde hair. That can't be it. Izuku shouted in despair. Big green teary. Give me more. I need to know more. With fists ready to. Give me more. Vision shifts slightly to the side to reveal spiky blonde hair. Izuku fell on his knees and stared at the pile of blood left by the carrier. That apparently knew him. Why couldn't you give me more? Izuku heard footsteps running towards him. Being shown so little in those memories angered him. And now was the worst moment for carriers to show up. Izuku formed the whip. A carrier showed up on the edge of the fog, only to receive 3 blades into its abdomen. Izuku clenched the blades like a fist, quickly shortened the whip to catch the carrier in his other hand and slam it into the road. Black tendrils shot out of his body to finish the job. I want to know who I am. The body was broken into pieces and absorbed. Another carrier showed up and suffered from the same fate. Third one. Fourth one. Tell me more. Useless, useless, useless. Heavy pants broke the silence. Izuku kneeled near pools of blood, more frustrated than angry now. When he told Izumi about bulkier carriers with claws, he honestly believed that they were similar to each other, while carriers were different. Now he wasn't sure. Izuku noticed that carriers all were similar in one thing. They were weak. Their quirks were especially weak, and during life they were part of a gray mass, a crowd. No will, no power, no memories, no use. Long fingers, small wings, growing hair into forms that you want. What a sick joke. Izuku punched the road and left a sizable crack, while barely feeling the impact himself. He sighed and stood up. At least now he saw a chance to remember himself. His new target, the boy with spiky blonde hair that he saw in that memory. Izuku closed the window behind him, and Izumi immediately appeared in the doorway. Instead of getting downstairs, the boy preferred to sit down and lean against the wall. How's the road? Yes. Izuku looked too clean to having been engaged in a fight, in her opinion. That was a good sign. Interesting. Izuku ran a hand through his hair. He couldn't tell her too much. Dealt with 5 carriers, and to do it I had to actively attract their attention. Couldn't take any chances with them surprising us at every corner. Izumi's eyes widened. He killed 5 infected and didn't even get a single stain of blood on him. That's just ridiculous. I guess the road is mostly clean. Izuku continued. The number of carriers here and closer to the city is just incomparable. Have you met any of those bulkier carriers? Izuku shook his head. I didn't. The road is clean. Izumi sighed in relief. With all the talk about those deviant carriers, she getting more and more anxious about them. So, when are we moving out? I'm not tired or anything, so I can go even now, Izuku asked her. Izumi looked into the hallway behind her. We are ready. The fog is quite thick. I will guard our back, Izuku immediately announced. He needed the full view just in case. No, I'll be in the back. You lead the way. Izumi herself wanted to see her daughter and Izuku clearly. The boy decided not to argue. Big brother Izuku will protect us, right? Hana decided to stick closer to Izuku instead of being protected between her mother and the boy. Izuku smiled softly. Yeah, we just need to be a little quieter. Oh, Hana. Yeah. Izuku scratched the back of his head. If something goes wrong while we are going. If bad people appear, close your eyes. Close my eyes. Why? It can get a bit scary, I can protect you better if you close your eyes when I fight. Oh, and you should stay between me and your mother. I don't want to cut you on accident with my quirk. Izumi sighed looking at them talking to each other. Empty street was constantly putting her on edge, but even this was much better than the burning city. She shivered, thinking how much of a hell it was to be in the center right now. The boy and her girl having a little chat actually helped her to calm her nerves a bit. The first half an hour was eventless, luckily. Once lively, now lifeless streets guided them with the streetlights. Slowly but surely they were getting to the edge of the city. There, somewhere in the forest, should be the edge of the dome. Izumi doubted it would be hard to find. A carrier, Izuku announced, activating the claws. Hana, close your eyes. Yuha. The girl was quickly pulled closer to mother who stood guard, looking for another threat. Irarg. Those carriers weren't exactly quiet after all. It was running towards them when Izuku impaled its head with his long claws, killing it instantly. Damn, those can be quite useful, Izumi mused. While she was mentally commenting Izuku's claws, the boy was barely containing himself from absorbing the creature. He stood motionless in front of the carrier's body when a black tendril shot out of his body. Izuku caught it before it went too far. Not now. I can't do it in front of them. The tendril continued to struggle. Listen to me, damn it. Are you okay, Midoriya? Why yeah. We should get off the road for a few minutes. Hana, don't open your eyes yet until we hide. Izuku started retreating from the body and the tendril finally retreated. He will take all extra steps to ensure their safety. Once again, Izumi noticed that there was no blood on Izuku despite clearly seeing how some of it stained him. Where did it all go? Just as he suggested, they attempted to hide for a few minutes in case the carrier attracted some other infected. I hear one, no, 2 more coming, Izuku whispered. Next move. With her daughter exposed to the danger, Izumi was getting a bit more restless. I don't want them to follow us the moment we make noise. I will deal with them. When Izuku left, Izumi and Hana heard familiar screams of the carriers that quickly got silenced. Arg. Arg. Damn, that boy was making a quick job. JJ. Mom. Izumi widened her eyes. This one was coming from somewhere behind. Once she turned around, she saw one of the infected running right at her, but then, whoosh, a black rope or something flew past her and impaled the carrier. Before it could do anything, the carrier was dragged to where Izuku was and quickly disappeared. Still shocked, Izumi in her fighting pose started to frantically look around when something caught her eyes on the roof. With wide eyes and heavy breathing, she still tried to mentally prepare herself for a fight. It was clearly an infected, with large red boils on his head. Before Izumi could take a better look on it, it fled into the mist. What the hell? Are you okay? This carrier didn't got you, did it? Izuku returned, examining them with his eyes. Didn't you say that the road was clear? And what was that? I thought your quirk was the claws and super strength. Izumi whispered quite aggressively. It was. I spent 2 hours walking around here. It was much clearer. Maybe they came after I left after all the ruckus I made, he thought. As for my quirk. Well, I never told you that the claws are my quirk. It's body manipulation. I can create organic weapons and generally much stronger than a normal person. You never asked me before, so I didn't tell you. Izumi wiped her face, not really listening to Izuku. Whatever. That question was just a way to express her frustration. Hana was sitting with her hand covering her mouth. Izuku approached her and kneeled. Don't worry, I dealt with them. Big brother will protect you. Don't go away then. Like now. Izuku nodded. Okay. I won't since you asked me. Midoriya, Izumi sighed, now a bit calmer. There was a strange carrier. It was on a roof, and fled once I saw it. It saw you and didn't attack. Exactly. Izuku looked at her, not sure what to say. Maybe he should have rested a bit after all. I don't like it. I propose we go faster even if it will make more noise. I doubt that a lot of carriers came here since the last time I was here. Let's go. The last part of the trip was uneventful as well. They only met one carrier. Now, the 3 of them were standing on a road near the edge of the forest. What are we waiting for? Let's go. It's not like we will get lost. We just need to stick close to each other and go forward, Izumi said, looking around. Izuku nodded and made the first step. The foggy dark forest felt just as lifeless. Actually, calling it a forest would be a mistake. It is only a small part that happened to be inside the dome. So, when a few minutes later all 3 of them were standing near endless concrete wall, Izuku was prepared. The forest looked so untouched by the presence of the dome that it made Izuku feel as if this concrete construct always was there. So, this is the edge. Izuku raised his hand to touch the concrete. Our chance to leave. Izumi was trying to tone down her excitement. Yeah, Izuku smiled, your chance to leave. Izumi glanced at him with worry. We will notify the military, just as you suggested. We won't leave you after everything. Yeah, we won't leave Big Brother. Izuku smiled, and his hands started forming claws. The mother and daughter got a little away from him when he prepared to attack the dome. Clang. Damn. Working night shift sucks. A man in military uniform rubbed his eyes. The second man looked much more focused with his eyes glued to the screen. How can you be so relaxed considering just where we are? Our job is to make sure that this red flu shit doesn't get into the world. And there you are about to fall asleep. And that is considering that you slept during the day as well. The first man turned to the second one. How can I be so relaxed, you ask? My man, we are one of many cogs that monitor the security on the largest military formation in the world. How many countries are helping us here? 9. 10. Do you remember how many military units are in the area? What on earth can happen here that won't be dealt with in milliseconds after appearing? Attention. Dome integrity at risk. Danger level yellow. Investigation highly recommended. Sleep disappeared from first man's eyes and he immediately became much more serious. He got the phone. This is negative 2,554 Hong Kong dollars of SM unit. Something got dangerously close to the dome and attacked it. Coordinates are 167 degrees counting from the north clockwise. Danger level yellow. The man with a rifle hanging on a belt around his neck was walking towards his military unit, evading occasional rows of other military squads on his way. His slightly baggy armor was created specifically to work in areas with air pollution, be it a chemical leak or a biological danger. 21 was written on it. In his hands he had a helmet that had next to no protection, but instead giving the man much more vision. Ideal for a commander standing behind his troops. When installed, the tubes of the armor will connect with the helmet to give him fresh air. The automatic signal about the dome status forced the military units into movement, And now a lot of reserves were being sent to the closest defense lines around the dome. Squads started gathering for orders of their commanders, while heavy weaponry was being transported to the area of danger. Integrity of the dome is obsolete. Among the crowd of military, one squad of 7 people looked quite bored. The man approached them. Once the squad noticed him, they all stood up with their backs straightened. "A mission, Major. A mission. We were instructed with investigation of the dome from inside. Some bird scratched it or a carrier bumped his stupid head on it. Whatever. Our objective is to deal with any danger to the integrity of the dome. We will take the vehicle. Big boy deserves to flex his wheels a bit." Indeed. Third Blacklight squad moving out. As they started going, the Major contacted the gatekeepers at the southern part of the dome. "Beal 3, Major Cam 21. We need a clear path into the dome. How's the situation around the gates?" "Hear you loud and clear, Cam 21. Ta weather is clear as a day. Haven't seen a single carrier since ta morning, mate." M21 stopped. "Not a single carrier since the morning." You aren't drunk over there. How can there be not a single carrier at the gates?" "Hell if I know, mate. Go and see yourself." Izuku managed to make the cut about 20 centimeters deep. Izumi and Hana were watching the surroundings in case an enemy attacks. "Damn it, it's actually much harder than I expected," he quietly commented, continuing to slash the concrete. "It was much sturdier than the roads for sure. Maybe I should punch it instead of slashing." The claws disappeared. Now normal fingers rolled into fists as Izuku prepared for the punch, gathering his strength. Once the arm turned black, signaling about the peak of its power, Izuku punched. The impact rippled the fog in quite a large area. He peeked at the result of his punch, and found that it dealt much more damage. Izuku nodded to himself and prepared to punch again. "Midoriya." Izuku stopped to turn to Izumi and little Hana behind her. "Yes, Ms. Oagawa. The military. They are here already." "Really? That was fast. Still, the 3 of them should be cautious." Izuku followed Izumi out of the forest. Their wide, long black truck reminded a building on wheels more than it reminded a vehicle. On the roof there was an antenna. No doubt for the connection between the unit members on the mission. It stopped in the forest, and men in armor started appearing from it one by one. "This is the place. We go on foot from now on. Our prime objective is to find the place where the attack on the dome happened and rate the damage," said the man with a helmet that gave him a lot of vision. It looked very unsafe even to Izuku. The boy looked at Izumi and Hana. "This can be our chance to leave," he told them. "A few minutes ago we had a certain way to leave this dome. Now we only have a chance for it. What exactly can we do? If they are here to investigate the damage I dealt to the dome, then I can't exactly continue damaging it right in front of them. They are our best way to leave right now." "Fuck. Yeah, I feel the same." Izuku turned to her and then to the forest behind her. "Hide a bit deeper in the forest. I'll talk to them." "Midoriya." Izumi looked at him with wide eyes. Are you sure? This can be dangerous. Deadly dangerous." Izuku smiled sadly. "What other choices do we have?" Izumi sighed shakily and looked right into Izuku's eyes. Be safe then. We will watch from a distance. And good luck." Izuku nodded. His eyes were full of confidence, and looking into them calmed Izumi as well. Once they got into position, Izuku stood up. The soldiers stopped. "I am not infected. Please help dash." Izuku immediately received a bullet in his head. A second later he fell on the ground. "Damen, Major. Always the first one to shoot, aren't you?" one of the soldiers commented. The Major looked at the place where the boy stood. "People around here were exposed to the parasite for 5 days. We aren't taking any risks back to the other side. And look. He must have been the one behind the attack on the dome. Big brother." The soldiers prepared for attack. "Who was it?" "A kid." The Major started going into the forest. "No. Another risk. Hound take the lead. Izumi, with wide eyes, grabbed Hana and ran. Her quirk enhanced her blood, and thus her muscles and respiratory system. Even while holding her small daughter, she was able to run quite fast. Mum. Izuku, he is still there. I know, sweetie. She answered, still running. I know. Be but dash. No buts for now. Be quiet. Gunshots echoed through the forest. Izumi looked back only to find one of the armed men slowly catching up with her. Fuck. Major looked at the boy's body. He clearly was shot in his head, and yet there was no blood. Strange. What's strange, Major? The group of soldiers separated in two. While one half of the squad followed the scream, the other half continued to find the damaged part of the dome. Major looked at Izuku again before leaving. The boy. There's no blood from the injury. Are you sure you even got him? Stupid question. Of course I did. I saw the bullet in his head. As they were leaving, none of them noticed Izuku's fingers twitching. With a hole in his head, he slowly opened his eyes. What was that? He raised his hand to touch his forehead, feeling a strange alien object inside him. Izuku formed claws and dug into his forehead, delving in it. A few seconds later, he had dug out a bullet. Looking at it, he couldn't help but feel anger building up inside him. It is one thing to help people get on the other side of the dome when it was being built. It is one thing to help as much people as you can while the inevitable doom was on the way. Izuku could see his distorted reflection in the bullet. But to kill those who are not infected, those who seeking your help. Is this how you see us? No better than infected. You scum. Anger was not stopping, on the contrary. His body was enhancing it instead of shutting it down like panic or sadness. Black tendrils and blades were appearing and disappearing randomly on Izuku's body as he was standing up. The teeth became sharp and started growing. They became so unnaturally large they would break a jaw of a normal person. Scum like you doesn't deserve to live. You are the danger. And I won't let any danger get to those I protect. Well, everything seems good so far. One of the soldiers commented. At least there's no horde of the carriers, you know. Yes, that would be unpleasant. The major commented. Rin, are there any news with other soldiers? It's taking them way too long to catch the girl and the woman. Rin. 3 men turned around only to find one of them absent. Rin, return. That's an order. They prepared their assault rifles, not sure what to think. Major started going back to where he saw Rin for the last time. Stick together. We must dash. UAA. Major turned back only to find another member of his team getting dragged into fog. Fire! He and the last man shoot into the fog randomly. Once the mags were empty, they quickly reloaded and continued firing again. The fog returned the favor as a long black tendril with 3 blades on the tip impaled Major's last squad member and dragged him out of vision. ARG dash. With panic in his eyes behind the visor, Major was looking around, slowly retreating to the vehicle. His eyes would notice any movement at the edge of the fog, but the enemy didn't attack. His heavy breathing was the only thing he could hear. On his slow retreat, Major stepped on a branch. He heard ruckus in the trees, but then, he saw it. Time slowed for the Major as he was taking in every detail of his enemy. The boy was approaching from above. Clearly he made a jump from one of the trees right on his position. On his hands he had giant claws, ready to pin and shred him into pieces. The expression of rage on his face made him look more like a feral beast than a boy. This is it. That was, frankly speaking, not the way he thought his road would end. But who was he to change what was decided for him? Izuku reached the Major and pinned him down, before shredding the front of Major's body, slashing through bones and muscles. Once the body was prepared, black tendrils shot out of Izuku's body and tore it in half, absorbing it. Tesuke, you really want to go and become a mercenary? They are not mercenaries. I answered, they are blacklight. They help people with dangerous situations and keep them safe. And have you seen their armor? Damn, they look cool. Not your typical army, too. Just be honest and say that you can't go anywhere else because of your failing grades or something. I was standing in rows of other recruits in black uniforms. From this point you are blacklight. Be prepared to join your senior officers on missions around the globe, privates. I'm not a master of big speeches, so I will be brief. All of you knew what you were getting into. You had your training. So now, instead of continuing reading bullshit on the paper here, come here one by one and say your oath. Let me guess. Your quirk is so shitty that you just couldn't become a hero? That's why you are here. The question was addressed to me. Well, I wouldn't say so. I know for sure a few heroes with some kind of skin-hardening quirk. It's actually quite good, though it's hard to move in it. If I combine it with armor, I bet not even a bullet would pierce it. Wanna check if it's true? Captain. It was addressed to me. One of the rookies approached. The mission description was a bit unclear to me. Are we going to force people to stay home? By force I mean really by force. He nodded. Yes. We were bought to help with rioting citizens during the quarantine. As long as we are paid, we need to make sure they stay inside. For their own safety. Remember, our job is to make sure that the danger doesn't spread to the closest regions or countries. By whatever means necessary. Less than a second passed for Izuku as he assessed the clear memories of the first human he really absorbed. Not wasting time, Izuku quickly ran towards Hana and Izumi. While running, he noted that he looked taller. Examining himself while evading trees proved to be surprising. He was wearing Major's armor. You are joking, right? He copied Major's look. His height, his armor, his face, his memories, his quirk. With a mental signal, he quickly returned his normal look. Now, however, was not the best time for it. He still needed to save Hana and Izumi. Fuck. Izumi continued to curse. How long was he going to follow them? Why wasn't he falling behind? Damn it. His quirk must be somewhat similar to hers. She looked back to see the man following her. Izumi turned around and was met with a horrifying picture. Right from the fog appeared carriers. Not just any carriers. Head had large boils of yellowish liquid. One arm was deformed and broken with bones sticking out of it. But it barely mattered, since that broken hand was just a small part of a much bigger limb with claws. Those were the bulkier carriers. The ones Izuku told her about. The ones her daughter saw in the window. The one she saw on a roof, stalking her. With a scream of panic, Izumi turned around and started running in another direction, only to be met with another gunshot in her direction. Caught between a rock and a hard place, she tripped on a tree's root and fell. Is this it? Is this how it all is going to end? Her grip on her daughter became stronger and tears started forming in her eyes. In despair, she shut her eyes, expecting either monsters or the soldiers to end her life. She waited. And waited. And then opened her eyes. The bulkier carriers were ignoring her and running straight at military units. Fire appeared from one of Carrier's hand, and it sent a wave of heat right at the soldier that chased her. The rest of the squad caught up, only to get met with claws, fires and electricity. If she wasn't mistaken, one of the carriers was flying. Izumi watched in awe as a military squad was thrashed and destroyed in mere seconds. The awe didn't last long. She quickly stood up to run, but the road was blocked by another bulky carrier with the claws. She turned around, but the other side was blocked by the carriers that dealt with the military. With no way to run, despair filled Izumi again, and she fell on her but before breaking down into crying. Izuku, run. He stopped evading the trees and started running through them, destroying them on the way. Please don't be too late. Don't be too late. Don't be dash. A horrifying picture froze Izuku in place. Trembling Izumi and Hana were standing inside a circle of those bulky carriers. Izuku could see charges of electricity dancing around an arm of one of them. Another one had his arm lit on fire. Another one was holding assault rifles in his hands. Izuku heard some ruckus and screams and turned in their direction. There, among the trees, one of the bulkier carriers was hovering, while holding trashing simple carriers midair. Those simple carriers were wearing military uniform. It seemed that they squad followed Izumi got infected. They were trying desperately to reach Izuku, but the bulky carrier's grip was strong. Just what the hell is going on? The image looks surreal. Midoriya. Izumi's voice was barely louder than a whisper. Do something. Be big B brother. There was no end of tears in Hana's eyes. Izuku, breathing shakily, activated everything. Claws, fangs, tendrils, Major's hardened skin. Even then, he still was unsure at what to do. He couldn't kill them all at once. The carriers, when they saw Izuku using his power, turned around and started to leave. Izumi looked at their retreating form, not sure if she could stay shocked any longer. She was interrupted when Izuku effortlessly lifted her and Hana in her arms and started running. Midoriya. Just what the hell was that? Izumi asked, looking back while clutching onto Hana to not let go even for a second. I don't know, Izuku said, and his grip and her back on knees became even more tight. They just fucking left. They ignored me. They attacked those bastards but not me. What the hell, Midoriya? I don't know. And I'm not sure if I want to know. Honestly, I couldn't care any less at the moment. We still can run. How? Izuku slowed down at the road, and the trio was met with the Blacklight's armored vehicle. With this, Izuku put Izumi and Hana down, and the two of them started approaching it, while the boy stopped. Midoriya, they won't let us through the gates even if we have a vehicle. Listen, what the fuck? Izumi turned around, but instead of the boy she was met with her reflection in the visor of military commander. She quickly stood in front of her daughter with a scowling expression. The man raised his hands. Ms. Owagawa. It's me, Midoriya Izuku. Is this one of your body manipulation tricks? She asked, still protecting her daughter. Apparently so. I'm not sure. Let's go. Once inside, Izuku quickly got to the radio station that should connect him with the hub outside. It was specifically designed to work in such places. Izumi put Hana in a vacant seat and approached Izuku. Even with such appearance, how are you going to dash? Beal 3 Major Kim, 21 speaking. The threat has been neutralized. The integrity of the dome is not in immediate danger. However, a brigade of engineers must enhance the wall from another side. A new form infected carriers has been noticed, with strong leaning on combat with quirks, and unusually high intelligence level. My propose is to immediately rise the level of danger to 10 out of 10, or even re-evaluate the rankings. We've found 2 survivors that were exposed to the air for 5 days, but do not show any symptoms of being a parasite carrier. I strongly advise on taking them for a medical checkup and possible release into a city after the quarantine. Izumi looked at Izuku with wide eyes, taking more and more steps away from him. Please don't ask any questions, he asked her quietly. I do everything I can to save you. How can I not ask question? Just, where the hell do you know it all? What to say? You said some numbers, even. I got it from my quirk. Then what the fuck is your quirk, really? I don't know. Major KM21. We've got your message. You were given green light to get the survivors to the base. Proceed to the southern exit and then to the 7th medical bay for disinfection and medical checkup of the survivors. Izuku nodded to himself and went to the driver's seat, with Izumi following him. You even know how to drive that thing. The engine roared, and Izuku put his hands on the wheels. I do. Let's get us out of here. Izumi finally allowed herself to fall into a vacant seat. The day was finally taking its toll on her, and she barely could keep her eyes open. Just do it already. Little did they know that thousands upon thousands of eyes were following Izuku as he was leaving the dome. Inside a crowd of bulky carriers was a mass of bodies, glued together into a large red formless mass. Politicians, scientists, teachers, soldiers. Those were the prime categories of people that created this red mass. Their mouth opened as one. Izumi carefully wrapped what little clothing she could find around Hana, who fell asleep as soon as everything calmed down. She too felt as her legs were giving up. The danger was behind them, and now was the first real moment to rest. She couldn't do that, however. Not now. Carefully, she got to the front of the military truck, where Izuku was driving. She sighed with a slight, sad smile. That boy. He clearly needed some rest himself. Now that she stopped to think about it. Izuku didn't even have a moment to relax, did he? Came, talked for a few minutes, left for 2 hours and left again with her and Hana that time, and now was getting them to safety. And during that he survived being shot with no visible consequences. Well, that could be count as his supposed body manipulation quirk. And even then, the military squad. He did what he had to. She couldn't imagine what he was going through right now. Of course, he still could be in alarm mode until they are truly safe outside the dome. Hopefully he won't break down after that. Izumi sighed again, and sat on a vacant seat at the front right next to him. She looked at Izuku, or what she had to call Izuku, because the man in front of her didn't look like the boy at all. Street lights reflected on the big helmet. Slight vibrations from the engine were shaking the tubes on his baggy armor. He looked absolutely identical to the man that ordered their execution not even half an hour ago. However, even that small time Izumi spent with him allowed her to notice slight changes in his behavior. He always looked to the sides as if checking everything around him. Maybe he liked the idea that everything was under control. His big eyes expressed comfort and warmth all the time. And he would clearly say something after noticing her staring at him for so long. You look quite upset, she broke the silence. Nothing changed in his posture after her words. Aren't you glad that we are leaving this place? She continued. I'm glad. Finally, an answer. Then why do you look so upset? I can feel it even through the helmet. Is it because of the military squad? She couldn't see his eyes, but hopefully he glanced at her at least once. She couldn't tell if she had his attention. It's quite hard to explain. Well, I don't see anything stopping you from trying. I do. Oi, what the hell? Is that really the boy that almost left when no one answered at the entrance of her house? Saved her. How many times already? Midoriya. I want to help. At least try to help me with helping you. The man sighed. Suddenly, starting with the top of his helmet and reaching his toes in seconds, the armor turned black with something that looked like red glowing veins. A second later, Izumi found herself staring at the boy that appeared at her house a few hours ago. He shape-shifted back without a sound. Izuku adjusted himself in the seat since he was much shorter now, but kept driving forward. He glanced at her, not afraid to look away from the road. Honestly, it felt like he had years of experience driving such heavy vehicles. What is Midoriya, Izuku? Huh? Izumi blinked a few times, and yet Izuku's stare in her eyes was just as intense. She didn't feel uncomfortable because of it. She knew that the reason behind such intensity must be the boy's desire to know himself. Even then, the question shocked her a little. Izuku glanced at the road for a moment. Sorry. I guess I should say it in other words. What makes us human? Not a human in general, like the structure of our skeleton or the way our brains work. Well, I mean a human as if a particular person. What makes you Owagawa Izumi? And what makes me Midoriya Izuku? He couldn't ask her the real question that bugged him ever since he took the wheel. Izuku knew that Izumi was slightly cautious of him, always making sure he stays in clear sight, especially with her daughter around. Now it seemed that the caution disappeared. However, the last events opened a new can of worms, and now it was Izuku's turn to be wary of his words. And no, the problem was not killing other humans, the military squad. He felt incredibly bad once everything calmed down, but it seemed that his body had other plans. He couldn't even grieve and be afraid of himself. The calming feeling stopped him from doing so, no matter how many times he tried to feel bad about it on purpose. He was stopped. With such strange quirk that turns off particular emotions, the only thing that stops him from killing someone is his knowledge that killing is bad. No, the problem was the major, codename KM, 21 Kaitomaki. 34 years old. No wife, no kids. Spent his life in blacklight organization. Knows how to use guns, operate heavy vehicles, lead a squad. Or it would be much more proper to say knew. He was the only human that Izuku absorbed. Normal human. The difference between their memories and the memories of infected carriers was immense. Izuku felt like he knew too much. Absorbed too much. How to behave. What to say. Code names, passwords, military secrets, plans, names, places. The quirk. Izuku could spend the rest of his life as Kaitomaki and no one would notice. He was on the crossroad. Be Kaitomaki or continue being Izuku Midoriya. He knew who Kaitomaki was. But he didn't know who Midoriya Izuku was. But he couldn't tell Izumi about it all. He didn't absorb even a single carrier when she was present. It would be too much. Imagine her face when she learns what he really can do. What makes me Izumi Owagawa, you ask? Izuku noticed her crossing her arms. Well, she chuckled. That's not something you think about every day, you know? My answer is everything, I guess. My bonds with people. How people see me and how I see them. How I behave. My quirk. My me, That's why you asked it. Now I see. Memories. Izuku whispered, but she heard him anyway. How much do they define us? How strongly our dreams are affected by them? With you the question was quite easy. What about me then? What makes me Midoriya Izu? I have no memories of who I am. I don't know about my family. And I don't know about any bonds I shared with other people. Is there anyone that can answer a question of, who is Izuku Midoriya? They both stared at the road in silence for a few minutes. Well, there's one. No, two, actually. Izumi's voice was calm, and yet full of energy. Izuku had an idea of who she was talking about. And what can these two tell Midoriya Izuku about him? Izumi chuckled. Well, one of them is sleeping like a log right now, but another one thinks that Izuku Midoriya is a boy with big heart that wants to help people around him, and she knows for sure that this desire will help him become a great hero. She knows that he is a bit timid, doesn't always speak his mind, prefers a comfortable corner to a center of everyone's attention. That person finds it admirable that despite memory loss, Midoriya Izuku's will to help everyone around him stayed. Like a core of his personality that withstood every strike at it, and brushed it off. Midoriya Izuku is not just a set of memories. He is also a personality, a set of characteristics, and I think this is much more important. You can create new memories, especially if you are young. Well, that's it. Did it help? Well, I thought of some of it on the go. Hopefully he won't notice it. She thought. Izuku's smile was the only answer she really needed. Of course. Damn it, don't overcomplicate things. Kaitomaki is just another set of memories I can access, but it is not me. Not me. I don't want to spend the rest of my life in blacklight like him. I want to become a hero. And I will become one. Why yeah. Quite a lot for a few hours of acquaintance, but... Thank you, Ms. Owagawa. You are welcome, Midoriya. Izuku turned to the road, feeling energized. This will help him to, at least, not think about it for now. He still needs to understand himself and his quirk. But he won't let his unknown past be the center of his existence. He still has so much to do. With the destruction of the city, a lot of people will have to start new lives and leave their previous lives behind. Izuku was not an exception to that. He, quite literally, was reborn today. Memories of life inside now destroyed city didn't matter much. However, it doesn't mean that he won't care if a chance to remember something will present itself. If not for the carrier with long fingers that someone threw at Izuku during his 2-hour outing, he would give up trying. But thanks to that carrier he still had a lead. The boy with blonde spiky hair. It was like searching for a needle in a giant field, but it was something. Izuku and Izumi sat in silence for a few more comfortable moments, until Izumi broke it again. So, how far is the exit? I thought it was quite close. Around maybe 15 minutes left. Not enough for a nap, but the doctors won't keep you up for long. Doctors. Keep us up. Izuku glanced at her. The memories of KM21 were priceless, especially now. Our ways will separate once we reach the exit. You and Hana will be taken for a few tests, and after this you will be put into a quarantine. Oh fuck. Another quarantine. Wait, separate. What about you? I will stay as KM21 for some time. Then run away to Tokyo since it's quite close. Then, I don't really know. They must have some sort of help center for those who fled from Mizutofu, right? I need to make an ID and... Well, I'll just do what I have to enroll in a hero school. Quite a lot of things to do. Yeah. For the sake of her own sanity, Izumi decided after all, not to ask any questions regarding how Izuku was supposed to act KM21 for some time. In the last hour, the boy continued surprising her about things he knew, even though he wasn't supposed to. No, she won't ask about it. Less you know, better you sleep. And she didn't want to start doubting him after everything he did for her. Despite knowing that they didn't have much time, Izumi's eyes started to close. Even a small nap wouldn't hurt. In comfort of the quite warm truck, she felt shivers running down her body. Wait, shivers. No, those weren't shivers. It was like a vibration, and it wasn't coming from the engine. Opening her eyes again, she noticed that the truck was slowing down. A bit confused, she turned to Izuku, who was sitting in his seat with shocked expression. Midoriya. Not answering her. He quickly stood up from the driver's seat and ran out of the truck. What the hell? Midoriya. Now completely awake, Izumi followed him. There he was, standing still in front of the truck, looking somewhere in the forest with the same shocked expression. Midoriya. What's wrong? He didn't turn to her. Did you feel it? He asked her. Feel what? That vibration. That voice. Izumi rubbed her eyes. She wasn't sure which one was losing it because of lack of rest, her or Midoriya. But she clearly felt something. Why, yeah, I felt the vibration. But I didn't hear anything. Are you sure you just didn't hear things? Izuku's voice became much quieter as he replied. That vibration was the voice. It was a sound wave. Okay, whatever, she will play along just for them to return on the road. She was just not in the mood to think, process and analyze. She just wanted to get in a warm bed. Then what did this voice say? Izuku turned to her, with wide eyes and his mouth still agape. Have a good trip. Have a good trip. Izumi looked at him for a few seconds, before quickly returning to the truck. What the hell, can't you drive faster? The speedometer is barely showing anything. Izumi's voice was quite loud because of her panicked state. It seemed that Izuku's translation of the sound wave scared her a bit too much. Speaking of the boy. He shape-shifted back into the military commander and glanced at her. No. If we go faster, the truck will turn over on the next turn or hit a tree. Turn. What turn? The road is straight as dash. Izuku made a sharp turn into the forest, and now was moving through the specific route that was cleared specifically for the military vehicles. The gates were close. That turn. Is it? You know what, you look too calm. Why are you so calm? Weren't you the one who ran out of the truck? That was a good question to Izumi. Izuku hoped she won't be too mad about his answer. Because of my quirk. I can't panic for more than a few seconds. You are starting to use that excuse quite a lot lately. Yeah, but it is still true though. Izuku picked up the radio. Approaching the gates. How's the weather at the exit? Still clear, mate. Finally came the answer. And yours? Not a soul around. Open the doors. The gates out of the dome were finally getting into their vision. It was barely lit by small lamps that only allowed to see the outlines. It was quite small, just big enough a single car to pass without problems. I guess for a better protection in case something breaks through. Izumi guessed what Izuku already knew. Its door began to open. You should wake Hana up, the man she still had to call Izuku told her. Without words, Izumi left her seat at the front. As gates opened, now a much more lit tunnel was seen. Just like in his memories. Izuku got the car inside and waited until the gates behind him closed. Then, another gate closed in front of the truck. Disinfection process began as a special liquid started washing the car. As it was done, the gates in the front opened and Izuku drove through. Izumi and Hana came to Izuku as they reached the end of the tunnel only to see the sun, shouted little Hana, pointing her small fingers at it. They couldn't stop staring at it. It could barely be called a dawn. But seeing the sky after a week inside could do that to a person. For Izuku it was even more special. He knew how it was supposed to look, but it just felt like he was seeing it for the first time. It was a bit blinding, but he couldn't get his eyes off it. You'll have plenty of opportunity to do just that. You haven't finished the job yet. Izuku shook his head and stared ahead. He needed to park the vehicle and report to the general about everything Kaito Maki learned during the outing before he leaves to Tokyo. However, despite the clear and urgent objective, Izuku couldn't help but glance at the sun while driving. It was too beautiful. Izuku parked the truck inside the medical facility. He rolled his shoulders a bit, and then turned to Izumi and Hana. The gates behind the truck closed. Please listen. Especially you, Hana. From that moment neither of you can call me Izuku or Midoriya or anything else. Just call me that soldier, okay? Izumi nodded with a slight sigh. There was no way she will give him any troubles. Got it, Mr. That Soldier. Izuku nodded with a slight smile, even though they couldn't see it behind the helmet. Then, the boy crouched to be on Hana's level. Why yeah, I got it too. Good girl, Izuku gently patted her head. I'll do the rest of the work. If they ask, tell them that you came because you heard shooting. I will look after you until I'm sure nothing happens to you. Izuku stood up, and hesitantly approached the exit of the car. With a shaking sigh, he opened the door and left. Lead me, Kaito Maki. He silently prayed. Follow me, he said in commanding tone, surprising the mother and the daughter. Izuku led them around the truck into a corridor that was slowly closed shut once they entered. Well, the doors closed too slowly for it to be a trap. Some strange air was forced inside the corridor. Izuku wasn't really sure what it was, but he knew that KM-21 wouldn't question it. This is a standard disinfection procedure, Kaito Maki explained. An additional security for the personnel. You have nothing to worry about. Got it, Izumi nodded. The door in front of them opened, and all of them found themselves in an isolated room. A man in white biohazard suit approached them. Those are the survivors. Izuku no KM-21 nodded. Yes. Izuku couldn't help but feel discomfort while talking to people in this form. The man nodded and waved to one of corridors. Please you two proceed there. Hana and Izumi looked at Izuku, who nodded in response. As you say, Doc, replied Izumi, taking Hana's hand. Without Izuku it will be a bit more nervous for her. But he promised to look after them. And she had no reason not to believe him. At least she didn't want to think so. Izuku looked at them going. Major KM-21, the same man addressed him. He clearly was very hesitant to ask the question. Where are? Wasted. Izuku, personally, would answer the question in a different way. It felt like a bad way of honoring the soldiers, even if they were ready to kill the civilians. However, he knew how to answer as the major, even if impersonating his left a bad taste. Alright. Do you need a rest? I can report for you. No, Izuku had to harshly decline. I'll do it myself. Just finish the checkup on my armor and let me outside. As you say. Izuku managed to find the right words to evade any medical tests. The armor of that blacklight unit was designed for harsh environments with possible hazards in the air. If everything was fine with the armor, then whatever danger was outside didn't affect the man inside. Honestly, he couldn't help but worry about the medical tests. He had yet to see any of his blood, and some time ago managed to dig out a bullet from inside of his forehead. It was not unheard of course. Quirks, in all their variety, allow one person to do something that is completely impossible for another. An ability to throw a fireball does not let you survive a grievous wound, while different body-related quirks were able to do just that. For example, moving organs inside the body to avoid damaging them. Izuku's educated guess, partly from his general understanding of the world, partly from KM-21's memory of certain quirks, allowed him to guess that his body manipulation would explain surviving such a wound in his head. And not just to others, but to himself first of all. Izuku left the facility, only to... Holy hell! He blinked a few times. A dome. He didn't see it inside the vehicle, but now... He felt so much small in comparison. He was standing a fair distance away from it, since he had to drive to the specific medical facility located a bit further outside, but just seeing how far in the sky it goes almost made him fall on his butt. Is this how it feels to be an ant? That dome sealed the entire city inside, including the high-rises in the center. Obviously it had to be big, but seeing it as yourself was a whole different picture. And they sent an elite unit because I made a few scratches on it. A few scratches were an understatement, of course. Izuku pulled himself together and started going in the direction of the better barracks for high military officers. He had one general waiting for report, Izuku reminded himself with a foul taste in his mouth. On the way, he started thinking about a passable story to tell him. After evading an ungodly number of military vehicles and walking for half an hour, Izuku got to the Blacklight hub. On the way, he noticed a few soldiers whispering about him being alone. That was understandable. In Kaito's memories, he spent time with his soldiers quite a lot. Seeing him alone after a mission was a bad sign. The soldiers at the entrance gave him a salute and let him enter. Izuku once more felt uncomfortable about it. Once inside, Izuku didn't waste any time to get on the second floor. He quickly got through the maze of corridors and found the right door, with a man in more casual camouflage clothes standing in front of it. The boy in man's body almost got to the door, but the man stopped him. Izuku wordlessly turned to him. The general is there, but he is a bit busy with the Japanese security management representative. Please wait a bit, Major. One of General's assistants. Izuku nodded just as silently, and leaned on a wall. He couldn't hear anything for some reason, and didn't even feel the vibrations of sound. It seemed that the room was made to be as private as possible. Acting as KM-21 wasn't that hard. He just needed to not say much, and only what was needed to say. Izuku would do a lot of things differently, but he mentally kept access to the Kaito's memories open just in case he needs to do something military appropriate ASAP. A frustrated man fled the room, stomping and grumbling something under his nose. The assistant looked at Izuku and nodded. You can go. Instead of a typical huge desk and beautiful, Izuku was met with a quite modestly looking room. Minus quite a good chair. One chair. One normal table. And a screen that covered most of the wall. And who is Maki? The General Jeremy Karpov said in English after nodding on the screen. Blacklight, being an international private organization, had members from all over the world. Kaito Maki, being a Japanese, was one of the best candidates to be one of higher officers in the region. Izuku saluted, though it felt quite strange to him, if a little bit funny. Take a seat. General's voice was a bit shaky. Izuku did just that. Can you imagine? The general started to rant the moment Izuku took the seat, clearly angry. They sent your squad without alerting me in the slightest. Those dumb fools can't. The TV started showing white noise for a few moments, surprising Izuku a bit. He expected the military HQ to have a bit better connection. And I have to get there as fast as possible. That runt they sent to me deserved the words I said. Anyway, tell me what happened. And get that damn helmet off. I feel like I'm speaking with an alien. Izuku was a bit scared. Helmet was part of his body. Literally. But, as long as he had contact with the helmet, nothing should happen to it, right? A bit nervous, Izuku finally got the helmet off. His hair was quite short and black in color. No beard, no mustache, no facial hair at all. The major tried to be as clean as possible in that regard. Izuku cleared his throat, remembering that he still has to talk in that calm tone. We've been called on that mission in such rush, because there was an attack on the dome from inside. The general nodded, now looking much calmer and interested. We took the truck, got to the place. And that's where things get complicated. How so, Maki? Izuku didn't like being called like that. Even then, he had to share the information he got from inside to the military. Despite the skirmish he had with them not so long ago, they were the ones who stood between the dome and the country outside. Kaito's memories were leading them to the gaps that were yet to be filled. We were ambushed by those things, General. Ambushed by them. General's stare turned into glare. Continue. At the place we've encountered a new mutation of the parasite, with strong leaning into combat. They didn't just use quirks like the carriers, they also had intelligence. I saw one of them carrying a gun. A gun? Yes. The man's face lost a bit of color. I see. The general replied a bit solemnly. Clearly, the danger was much higher than was initially anticipated. I have no other choice then. I will get to Japan myself. Oh, that sounds quite nicely. Right. As you say, sir. And how's the team? He did ask that damn question in the end. Izuku kept the character. Wasted. Now that made the general really pause. Repeat that. There's no one left but me, sir. Damn it, Maki, I appointed you there to, Ga. General threw his hands in the air. Izuku initially wanted to say that the gun that the combat carrier held was one of their team's, but decided against it. You did what you had to, right? Izuku nodded, keeping his outer calmness. Good. For such a failure to keep your teammates alive, I technically should demote you from your position, but at the moment you are the most experienced soldier from Blacklight around there. Keep it for now. Dismissed. Izuku slightly frowned. Technically right now, he was the experienced soldier of Blacklight in the area. But, in reality, Izuku will disappear once he has an opening. Boy mentally sighed in relief as the report finished. Sir. Yes. Izuku was a bit hesitant. Maki didn't act this way, so it was a risk. I've managed to find and get to safety 2 survivors. Can I look after them until you get here with reinforcements? General's eyes softened a bit. He understood the value of friendship and the value of family. It seemed that the abrupt loss of Maki's bonds with the soldiers under his command forced him to become attached to the first person he saw. Consider it an official order. Thank you, sir. Izuku smiled weakly, but then returned to the character and left the room, returning the helmet in place. Izuku reached the cafeteria where the soldiers were having lunch. He didn't feel particularly hungry. Luckily, considering his scary quirk. Even then he, as a human, knew that he needs to eat something when it's time. Seeing so many people didn't really surprise him. It felt as if the surroundings were returning to normal. Healthy people instead of lurking parasites were much easier to get used to. Once Izuku entered, he noted that the TV was showing local programs, which meant Japanese. Because of that, most likely not even a half of present privates could understand. However, a few moments after Izuku entered, the screen of the TV started showing white noise for a few seconds, earning some whines from the eating folk. They really need to fix their connection, commented Izuku, slightly shaking his head. As long as he didn't have to act specifically as Kaito Maki with people that personally knew the major, it was fine. But every time he had to borrow Maki's character, he felt dirty, uncomfortable. It wasn't his body, nor were those his words. He felt like this body was a suit that hid the real Izuku inside. 4 days passed quite quickly, since he barely had to do something. He checked Izumi's and Hana's status every day, and today was the latest update. They were perfectly fine, and will be transported to a closest city in a week. Izuku sighed in relief behind the helmet. Also, it seemed that common soldiers decided to cheer him up a bit, considering the loss of his squad. Not only they somehow got him a bottle of beer that they secretly brought inside the base, but he also got a ghost nickname. The origin behind it was a bit weird to Izuku. From what he learned, It seemed that TVs around Izuku started working in a strange way. Now, everyone immediately knows that Izuku got into cafeteria once the image turns into white noise for a few seconds. Otherwise, the connection was fine. And now, inside his quite nicely decorated room in the base, Izuku, still in full armor, was sitting on the bed, thinking. Stretching, claws, hardened skin, long fingers, large sharp teeth, small useless wings and growing hair into forms he wanted. Even if they sounded useless, Izuku remembered every quirk he absorbed / could imitate from the carriers, but couldn't find anything that could mess with electricity. He might actually have something related. After all, he had to learn about his quirk on the way. But even then, why did it last only a few seconds? Having nothing better to do for the closest half an hour, Izuku got to the large TV in the room and turned it on. Late news appeared on the screen, and Izuku sat down. After watching it for a minute, the connection started to disappear and turned into white noise. Again. Izuku waited for it to disappear again, but then someone knocked on his door. "Maki-san, are you messing with the TV signal again?" Izuku turned to the door about to answer, but managed to glimpse a bare moment the screen tried to show something. Izuku didn't know if he just blinked, of if there really was something in there. Shaking his head, he turned to the door. "I apologize. It should return back to normal any moment." Izuku heard the steps behind the door getting further and further. When he turned back to the TV, the image started to return. Izuku made a shaking breath as he exited the dorm. It's time. Time to start the new life, while searching for glimpses and whispers of his past one. Time to actively look for answers and understanding. It's time to run. Current destination, Tokyo. Izuku looked into the night sky. Something he liked to do a lot lately. It seemed that after the dome, the sky will always have a soothing effect on him. Then, his focus shifted to the capped bottle of beer in his hand. He won't drink it, of course, but the fact he even has that was heartwarming and depressing at the same time. Izuku knew that a lot of good people were here, serving to protect citizens. However, Izuku was not a fool, and knew about the military inner workings quite a lot now. Some time later, he will try to get information about Izumi and Hana. Should he receive something he doesn't like, well then, this place will burn. Even if he dies during the process. The first people that he met in that dome had a special place in his heart. If the military has no problem with killing citizens that they have to protect, then he, personally, will see no problems with killing such people. Only those who do not risk lives of others deserve to live. That is the rule that Izuku set for himself. He couldn't feel bad for killing people. He was indifferent about it, even if it scared him just a little. Thus, he needed a way to restrict himself and his behavior until he has a better idea of how this emotion suppressant inside his body works. Putting that topic aside, Izuku was glad that all the doubts about his identity disappeared. Quite some time ago, he asked Izumi the question of who he is. Yes, he could continue his life as KM21, but it continued to irritate him and make him uncomfortable. Despite memories, Izuku continued to contradict what he wanted to do, while impersonating the major. It seemed that the memories weren't the only decisive factor. With a sigh, Izuku quietly put the bottle on the ground. After walking a bit into more forested area, Izuku closed his eyes, imagined the map that Izumi showed him at her house. He opened his eyes and adjusted his direction. He prepared himself. Legs started to turn black, as the boy was about to stop holding back. Weak red light inside his legs dimly lit the grass below him. And then he ran. Ran without getting winded. Ran faster than most of the military vehicles he saw in the area. Ran, leaving cracks on the roads that he occasionally crossed, forcing social workers to urgently fix them once they noticed the damage. Ran in the darkness of night. That wasn't a handicap for him. He ran to create new memories. His memories. Setting sun was slowly painting the sky in orange, while soldiers on the ground, for once, wanted their leashed trained dogs to be slightly more active. The security around the base, at least when it came to cameras, was still quite lacking around the territory. Only 10 days passed since the outbreak, and all different armies had troubles with logistics and chains of command in the field. A small price to pay for their fast response to help their neighbor country. And it was a small price considering what kind of horrors the dome hid inside. However, that issue with the security led to this exact situation. Only thanks to the quick notice of damage on the roads, the problem was noticed so quickly. Once the initial investigation was done, everything was obvious. Someone ran from the military lines of defense around the dome, for whatever reason. The first thought that ran through everyone's minds, no matter how quickly it was discarded, was that something broke free from the dome. No matter how small the enemy was, a contact with a parasite that resulted in even a small scratch would lead to a certain infection, and it turn into a monstrosity, a few minutes later at best. Luckily that was not the case. The second thought was more discouraging than anything. Deserter. It couldn't be anyone from foreign countries since those people would be found quickly, and they couldn't return home anyway. In most cases. One day was more than enough to notice that the major, one of the best in blacklight private security and military organization and most experienced in the area, was absent. After a long and tiring head counting, there was no doubt about it. As well as there was no doubt about man's destination. Tokyo. However, that's where the good things about the search ended. A captain of Japanese military sighed, and kneeled next to his trained dog. Instead of leading the squad by the scent, the dog only whined and circled around. How the man did it was a mystery, but he didn't leave any solid scent to track. Even trained scouts with quirks for searches had trouble with tracking anything. As they said it, scent was changing every few dozens of meters. Tracking such a man in a city like Tokyo, especially now, will be a problem that would waste too much resources. Where the hell is he? Name? The woman asked in a sharp tone that betrayed her delusively young appearance. She hit her screen a few times, since it stopped working for a few seconds once the boy entered. Izuku Midoriya. Midori dash like in green. Yeah, like in valley and dash. Age, the woman nodded. Oh come on, for once his notebooks that he read at home had a use. He knew how his name was written. Wait. Izuku blinked. Around 14 or 15, he asked hopefully. He saw the school bags and the content inside. He was in 3rd class of the middle school. The precise date of birth, however, was a mystery. The woman looked at him with a raised eyebrow and an expression that just screamed that she wanted to shout something at him, but gave up and started looking for him in her PC. She was quite obviously very tired. Found you. Izuku Midoriya, Aldera Middle School. The woman narrowed her eyes and looked at something on the screen, and then at Izuku, as if comparing two pictures. Nodding to herself, she started to copy and paste the data from her program onto his new ID that was yet to be printed. The process was still a bit rude, since the country was a bit of the mess at the moment. Where's your mother? Why aren't you registering for the ID together? She asked absent-mindedly, not noticing the face of discomfort on the boy. Izuku gaped for a moment, and then bit his lip while looking away. He didn't know what was worse. Him not remembering his family, or him not experiencing the loss. God, he didn't even know his mother's name. Izuku was lost at what to say for a few moments. Was there a believable lie? Was the truth a bit too confusing? Such a simple question made a small-scale mess in his head. I don't know where she is. I haven't seen her. The woman paused for a few seconds. Quickly, without the boy noticing, she got to Inko Midoriya, profile only to find her unregistered. People will be confirmed to be missing if they do not register as Mizuta refugees in the closest 3 weeks. Even barely, the boy had a chance. Even if that will be the case, however, she will not give him hopes that most likely will break some time later. Izuku, however, was a bit lost. The woman didn't ask anything about his father. He most likely didn't register as well, but there had to be a catch. She would ask something like, "Where are your parents?" and wouldn't talk about her mother specifically. Did he die earlier? Like before the red flu outbreak? Izuku was confused, but asking a stranger woman where his father was would feel too weird. Also, she looked quite tired, and most likely had quite a short fuse because of it. He didn't want to cause her any troubles. The woman continued with the procedure. Now, there was a small-scale quirk test that would confirm the identity of the person sitting in the room with her. There was little doubt that shapeshifters that did exist in the criminal world would try to use this mess to be someone they aren't. And quirk showcase. Never mind, she started and finished the sentence without skipping a beat, realizing the idiocy of her question when she read the info she had on the boy. She didn't just ask him a painful question about his mother just to jump to another hurtful topic. Did she? Desuke. The boy is quirkless. What was he supposed to show me? Izuku blinked again, almost ready to show his claws. But since the woman clearly had something else on her mind, well, he just wanted all of these formalities to end, so he will just play along with whatever she says just to get out quicker. No one cancelled the school, and the more time he spends getting everything ready, less time he has for studies, and thus, less chances to get into a hero school. Well, the school was cancelled for 4 days, but it was such a small amount of time it wasn't even funny. He was skipping already, and he had yet to even get into one. Luckily, the process of entering a school was simplified for Mizuta refugees. Also, those new temporary IDs also were used as bank deposit cards, to which the financial help from the government will be sent. Once Izuku gets it, what exactly was he supposed to do with the money, really? He didn't really get tired. He can get food in refugee centers, and only slept because it was time to sleep. He could travel on foot, if his little adventure showed him anything this night. Well, he still needed a home. Refugee centers were cramped mostly, and after those few minutes he spent in Izumi's home, he couldn't help but feel the need for a place for a mental rest. Oh, and he will need a phone as well. Excuse me. Izuku started, feeling the lack of knowledge finally getting on his nerves. How exactly will I get into a middle school? The woman finally sent a request with the data to people in the room behind her. You are assigned to the 15th Refugee Center. There are assigned supervisors for this type of things. Considering you don't have any legal guardian, the choice will be made for you by them. Hopefully, the situation will be stabilized enough for you to at least choose the high school yourself by the end of the year. Izuku nodded. That was something. Maybe. Just maybe there was a chance she could know another answer for one of his questions. His ID flew through a small window by someone's telekinetic quirk. Excuse me. The woman put the ID on the table quite rudely. What now? Invite the next person in line. Izuku took the ID and started leaving the room, still facing the woman. By any chance, did you see a boy with spiky blonde hair? He should be around my age and dash. I didn't. Invite the next person. We are about to get closed for today. Roger that. Izuku responded to an order like a soldier and fled the room. The woman sighed, slumping in her seat. The more questions he asked, more it hurt her heart to answer them. May God help them all get through these times. Izuku sighed as he left the door. It seemed that he, after all, was indeed searching for a single needle in a giant field, with no proof that the needle in form of that boy even exists at this point. As he turned around, the scale of said field hit him in the face again. Figuratively, of course. Rows and rows of people were standing in a giant queue that continues even outside the building. An old man that kindly let him get into the room first slightly patted Izuku's shoulder, before getting into the room with his wife. Izuku nodded to him with a sly smile, and went to exit the building. Tokyo, being incredibly close to Mizuta, was crowded. The refugees from Mizuta didn't spread evenly in the city. No, a lot of them stayed closer to buildings such as the one Izuku has just left. Refugee registration centers. Streets closer to such centers were filled with parked cars. To get their documents earlier and start living again, people stay in lines for more than a few hours, and some people even sell their places in the queues. It felt like there was a big event in the city that brought the tourists from all over the world. Millions of them. Like a championship. Or a festival. Festival of pitiful, desperate and broke. It was a miracle how someone even allowed him to get this far in the line. An elder couple, and he, who was seen as an orphan by everyone around. Yelling at such people could get you quite a bad look from others. But those weren't the times when people are interested in what everyone thinks about each other. Just as he thought, it was a miracle. He was allowed to get in the middle of the line before it was midday, and only now, in the evening, he got out. The sun was painting the sky in orange, but being in such a crowded street didn't allow him to enjoy its soothing effect to the fullest. Izuku sighed and looked at his ID. First step was complete, and it even had the address of his refugee center. Izuku blinked, shook his head, blinked again. Quirkless. Is this some kind of a joke? If it was, it wasn't funny. He spent his whole day there for a mistake in his ID. With face full of confusion, Izuku returned to the registration center. Some more daring people tried to stop him since he took too much time by himself, and had his ID already, but Izuku ignored them. Those people didn't try to stop him too much, since getting too far from the line could get you a place in the very end of it. Returning to the door, he saw that elder couple that let him go first exiting the room. The woman that made him an ID with a mistake showed in the doors. "We are closed for today." She sighed, already imagining the traditional morning brawls about who was behind who. She looked at Izuku for a moment, but then closed the door. Damn it. Izuku sighed. He didn't have much choice, it seemed. He will come here tomorrow, or not. There was a possibility that if he gets in the line tomorrow, he will get out only the day after tomorrow. Maybe he could wait until there aren't so many people. He went to the place where refugees lived. It was stationed in a university that had some place for people to live in its big gym. Not all of the refugees needed those centers. A lot of them still had their money saved on cards, thus they could afford a temporary place to live. However, the price for real estate skyrocketed in regions further to the west, while people in regions closer to Mizutofu were trying to sell their apartments fast, and thus, cheaper. At least if he heard people in the crowd right. It seemed that getting a place is much more affordable if it was close to a deadly danger. Hopefully he will get something for himself close to a hero school. Maybe even around UA if he is lucky. Maybe you could help me find a school or a rental apartment closer to UA? Izuku asked with honest hope in his tone, praying that beside his morning jog from the military base to Tokyo, something will work out today. He needed to get into a hero school if he wanted to become a hero, which was obvious. UA being the biggest and most prestige hero school in Japan was the most obvious choice. Izuku felt that when it comes to studies, he would do just fine if he works hard. And the quirk? Well, he had a set of abilities that were interesting enough for a hero school. Speaking of which, those abilities are in need to be properly researched. UA being the best school meant not only the best equipment, but best specialists as well. They would help him, and thus he needed to plan getting into UA early. And thus, he wanted to find a school or an apartment closer to it. Rin Tokigawa, supervisor of 15th Refugee Center, only made a few confused blinks at Izuku's request. Refugee Center supervisor wasn't the most thrilling job in the world. They aren't paid a lot, just slightly below the average, and are only chosen among the social workers. However, what couldn't be denied about those people is their will to help. They volunteered to this job despite the payment, and thus their desire to help the desperate people leaving Mizutofu was not to be doubted. Though, there still could be a chance that being a supervisor would look great in a resume in the future. But that's why Izuku came to the man with his request, feeling that the man would understand his position, and help him get into a school he wanted. But Izuku felt his hopes cracking as the man started coughing from the surprise and slight shock. Though, on the outside no one would see what Izuku was thinking about. After getting his breathing under control, the man adjusted his round glasses and put his both hands on the table. Midoriya-kun, just to be sure, he started in both caring and daring tone. You want to get into a school or find an apartment closer to UA? Yes. Is there a problem? The man cleared his throat again. Midoriya-kun, UA was in Mizutofu. Oh wait, in Mizutofu. Now you see the problem. Sorry Midoriya-kun, but I think getting apartment in there should wait a bit. Midoriya slumped in his seat. Yue, it seemed, was out and traveling to the west where Shiketsu was. Maybe if get a part-time job he will be able to live there, but Shiketsu was not Yue. But it was something. Izuku put a hand to his mouth. With the recent rising prices for the apartments on the western part of the country, governmental help won't do much. Most likely it won't even cover the rent. To pay for it and still have food on the table and other stuff, I will need more money. And that's not even talking about getting a decent phone. Damn it, I should have taken it from the apartment after all. Or from the car. And getting the bag and filling it with food while I was inside proved to be a stupid idea. I should have taken all the notes from school. No, I'm getting distracted. No one said how long will the government help financially. So traveling west and getting into a middle school there is out of question. I will need a part-time job, which will lead to me having less time for studies, and thus having less chances to get into Shiketsu. The best shot I have is to get into a middle school here with low rent prices, and have a part-time job on the weekends during the year and during easier weeks in school. And during holidays, of course. With enough saved money, I will travel to the west on foot with a buffer money that will help me begin the life in a hero school without worrying about a place to live. That's it. That's the best dash. Midoriya-kun. The supervisor blinked a few times, not perceptive enough to understand more than first few sentences. Is there anything else I can help you with? Izuku blinked, stopping his mumbling. Well, a few things actually. Honestly, finding rental apartments isn't that hard if I'm, well, here. I asked you about it since I thought you could reach other cities. About school, I think I will settle with getting into a middle school here after all. Or somewhere in the eastern part of the country, since the rent is cheaper here. Izuku tried hard to not talk too fast. So, that's the first thing. The school. The second will be, does the help from the government cover getting a phone? If you mean literally handing out a phone to you, then no. Izuku nodded. Thanks for the information. And the third thing, have you seen or maybe heard about a boy with blonde spiky hair? You know, he should be closer to my age. Which is 14, by the way. Yes, now he knew his age and could show off this knowledge to others. Thanks, inaccurate ID. At least if got the age right. Hopefully. Izuku didn't know for sure. If you tell me his name, I would be able to help you. After all, families could get separated during this outbreak, and helping people find each other is part of our job. Izuku wanted to hit his head on the table. Not remembering anything sucked. I don't remember his name. Well, I'm sorry then. Can't help you with that. Izuku tiredly sighed. It was the second person that could possibly know something, and it was the second time he started doubting that this boy even exists. Or existed. Or anything. Izuku slumped in his chair, closing his eyes and silently reaching to that memory that he rewatched so many times, despite chills he gets every time he hears the only comprehensible words in that memory about, useful as a gift. Honestly, it felt as if whoever said those words in those memories talked neither to Izuku nor to the carrier that was thrown, but was talking to memories. He got distracted again. Tends to happen when so many questions plague your mind. Sorry for taking your time, Mr. Tokigawa. Izuku stood up and bowed to the man. Sorry for not helping you much, Midoriya-kun. The man nodded with a sad smile on his face. Izuku used his frustratingly inaccurate ID to get a diner at the cafeteria. Just as always. His appearance seemed to not work nicely with a TV. He sighed. Why the hell is this strange phenomenon following him? With a tray in his hands. He still looked around just in case someone that looks like the boy he looked for. Gave no results just like before. Also, there was a new problem. When Izuku got to the section with his bed, he one boy his age and a few mothers with small children. Even if he won't get enough sleep because of younger refugees, Izuku wasn't without his set of problems. The reason behind it is the inaccuracy of his ID that went even deeper. The problem was not only about the mistake with his quirk. His whole profile is stored there, which also included weight and height that shouldn't change much until refugees get the normal ID. Well, height was just as it was recorded some time before the outbreak. Weight, on the other hand. Recorded weight was used to get refugees a bed that would withstand the weight of the one who sleeps on it. And Izuku almost broke it the moment he got on it. It seemed that his weight was almost 4 times bigger than it was supposed to be. All those strange oddities are starting to pile up. It seemed that before losing his memory somehow, he had to hide his quirk for some reason, and he clearly had a better understanding at using his own quirk. Maybe. Izuku widened his eyes. What if he did something terrible, and couldn't live with the consequences or with conscience of his actions, and because of that he erased his own memory through sheer understanding of his body manipulation? Izuku shivered, thinking about it as he was already leaving the cafeteria. No matter how somewhat exciting it sounded, there still had to be a real reason for everything strange that happens to him. Izuku shook his head. Things like that should be left to specialists. All he needed to do is get to them. Shiketsu, ha. Didn't sound that bad, to be honest. Even if it got the new Best Hero School status because UA was destroyed in the city of Mizutofu. Izuku walked down crowded streets of Tokyo. These streets contrasted greatly with both refugee and registration centers. It was crowded because people wanted to walk around, buy things in shops that worked even this late. Izuku looked at himself. His simple gray t-shirt and jeans looked fine since, as he knew, they were part of him. They won't get dirty if Izuku have showers, and they won't get stains or be sweaty. In addition to that, Izuku didn't feel either hot nor cold. But it was still the only pieces of clothes he had if you don't count a full body armor of the major. He sighed, looking at the dark sky. Even with such a crowd around him, the atmosphere here was so different that he couldn't help but relax just a bit. He won't have a chance for it in the refugee center anyway. He didn't like it there. Looking at it gave him a few ideas to experiment with his quirk. Since he could copy the looks of a person, was there a chance that he could just copy a set of clothes? He felt like he could, but didn't know how exactly. Not seeing something better to do, Izuku started walking closer to the shops. Jewelry, branded shirts, sports clothes, restaurants. It was a lot, but he tried to memorize at least some of the clothes he saw on display or on other people. Izuku prayed that people will understand his position. He didn't have much spare money. However, with the incredibly large military and hero presence in the city, Izuku decided against trying to change his outfit right on the street. He could get in trouble for it since he was using someone's brand and so on without the permission. As Izuku walked to find a quieter place to find out the way he can work with clothes, he became more aware of the military and the heroes since they could give him problems at the moment. What he was doing wasn't exactly legal. The amount of military was understandable. They needed supplies from the city, and it was the closest large populated area to Mizutofu. Heroes, however. Izuku didn't know what to think. Surely the organized crime received a hit just as strong as other areas of business. Though with such a huge wave of refugees, there was little doubt that local crimes would rise just a bit. Judging by rumors, even All Might was somewhere in Tokyo. Shaking his head, Izuku found a sidewalk that no one used since it was so dark to navigate in it, which was no problem for Izuku and his vision. Now, making sure that no one sees him, Izuku closed his eyes and imagined a new t-shirt. And change. He looked at himself, but nothing changed. He closed his eyes again. Wardrobe. Nothing. Projection. Same gray t-shirt. Feeling some frustration, Izuku decided to go to more desperate measures. He took off his t-shirt. Maybe if he will let the t-shirt that was a part of his body be absorbed back in his body, then he will get a better understanding of how it works. Izuku made a calming breath and let go of his t-shirt. For the first time a part of him was disconnected. As it was falling, Izuku noticed how it changed color into black in some places. As it was falling, Izuku made sure that it didn't land on his sneakers. Once the t-shirt hit the ground, it lost its form and turned into a black mass that moved and quickly disappeared inside Izuku again before he even blinked. And now, there he stood, shirtless in the middle of a sidewalk, with no new knowledge on how to use his quirk. He wanted to bash his head on a wall, but was scared that he will break through it, and then he will have to pay for it. Okay. Down. There's still a way I can change clothes for sure. And if I do this... Izuku transformed into KM-21, armor and all that. Then, he quickly transformed back into himself. T-shirt was in place. Phew, at least, no one would think that I'm some kind of pervert that walks half-naked. All in all, at least he could return the clothes, so that was something. And also, he got a bit of new information about his quirk. Now he knew that will happen should he loses a contact with a part of his body, and Izuku's ears twitched. Not so far from him, there was a source of irregular vibrations. It wasn't like that voice that told him to have a good trip, but it appeared out of nowhere and didn't go anywhere. He specifically chose that sidewalk since there wasn't anyone, so why would... Izuku closed his eyes and concentrated on the vibrations. 2 sets of legs. One was trying to get free. Small sound waves. A muffled scream. Izuku opened his eyes and ran to the place that was just behind a corner. A man was forcing himself on a woman, threatening her with spikes that could be seen on his arms. They both noticed Izuku rather quickly. The man started threatening Izuku, but the boy didn't care. All he saw was a pleading face of the victim that seemingly couldn't protect herself from a somewhat dangerous quirk. The man pointed his spikes at the boy. In the next instant, countless tendrils shot from Izuku's body, immobilizing the man and keeping him pressed against a wall. Izuku walked towards the woman, but she quickly ran away once she was free. Seeing her run, Izuku blinked, and the rage disappeared just as quickly. Only anger remained. Izuku got closer to the man, narrowing his eyes, and then tilted his head to a side to evade a knife that flew past his head and stopped inside the wall next to the almost rapist. I wouldn't want someone else being blamed for my crimes. Leave, boy, and nothing happens to you. Izuku turned around to see what almost looked like a shadow descending onto the street. It was a man, quite tall, with a lot of different knives and swords on him. He covered his face with a mask. The man drew a blade. Izuku was not sure what to do. Blame for your crimes. From what I saw, it was this guy that almost raped the woman. The man pointed his sword at Izuku, who was standing in front of gradually more scared assaulter. And to bring justice on him. I will kill him. Leave. I don't want you to be blamed for what I'm about to do. Izuku shook his head. That's not how this works. We must bring him to police, and then dash. Then what, boy? Well, we will tell that he is a dash. The man snorted, interrupting Izuku again. The victim ran away. And you are not a hero. You don't have an authority to get someone to a police station and handle them a criminal. You will get in jail instead for using a quirk on someone. Izuku blinked. The swordsman was right. If you want to bring him to justice, then there's one way. Give me to him and forget about everything. I'll handle the rest. Izuku carefully assessed the situation. These two obviously weren't working together. If that was the case, Izuku would be attacked without warning. However, the swordsman's statement was true. Izuku won't be able to just get that assaulting guy to police. He didn't have an authority, and an attempt to bring him to justice will only get him into a jail, and with a stain in his record. He won't be able to join a hero school because of that. The same was with military. Izuku's eyes widened. Military. Course. It was a risk, but it was better than nothing. Help! Shouted the assaulter, still immobilized. Better prison than death. He tried to bait Izuku into helping him. Izuku knew that he couldn't risk exposing himself too much to those people. The plan was quite simple. Tightening the tendrils around the man in his grasp, Izuku started to suffocate him. Just enough to leave him unconscious but alive. Now, getting those tendrils with the unconscious man closer to his body, Izuku covered them with the protective quirk of the Major, and activated his claws. You won't get him. He will receive what is coming to him, but it is surely not death. The swordsman took another blade in his second arm, as a large grin appeared on his face. In your mind, even criminals deserve to be protected. Only those who don't risk the lives of others. You won't get far as a hero with such attitude. Huh. How? Why? The man prepared his blades. Because people want heroes to beat bad guys. Not protect them. He launched himself across the sidewalk, quickly changing his direction and trying to get around Izuku by running on the wall a bit, before making a slash at Izuku's prisoner. Izuku widened his eyes and attacked with claws, but the man quickly retreated. Izuku stood prepared once again, almost not noticing the weight of another person on his back. The man that soon will be known as Stain narrowed his eyes, as his grin disappeared. Just by the sound his claws make while tearing the air, I can feel how big the power behind the swing was. His gaze went from Boy's weapons to his face. And his expressions. There's something off about him. Even then, the boy deserved to live. If he wanted to be partly blamed, fine, he had a chance to leave after all. Honestly, their fight wasn't even that noticeable. Should they be found by heroes, he will actually make everything he can to make sure the boy won't be blamed. After all, you don't meet such a fine example of a future hero. Even if there was something wrong about the boy. Izuku, on the other hand, was not sure how to fight properly with an actual human being. He wasn't afraid of injuries, but a better technique wouldn't hurt. The man started running at Izuku. Considering that the man will most likely make another maneuver to hit the man in Izuku's grasp instead of the boy himself, Izuku decided to be the active side this time. Running and swinging his giant's claws at the man, though being careful not to damage him too much, Izuku blinked when the man redirected his attack with claws, forcing Izuku to stumble and give the swordsman a free shot at the man on his back. There were still some gaps in his makeshift cocoon. Thinking quickly, Izuku created blades on the tendrils similar to those he had on his hands, forcing the man to retreat. The pattern repeated itself a few times. The swordsman will redirect an attack, even if he had to damage his blades, and try to pierce the man on Izuku's back, while Izuku makes something with his tendrils to force the man to retreat. The swordsman cursed. It seems that I will have to use my quirk after all. How low he has fallen, he thought with a small smirk. Use his quirk on a child. The world was as diverse as it could get. The man that will be known as Stain had little doubt that there were more than a few people that were able to beat him, even if they were younger than the boy in front of him. At least when it comes to raw power. Before he managed to continue his line of thoughts, something whistled in the air. Widening his eyes, the swordsman dodged to a side as a large rope of black muscles hit the road next to him, breaking the outer layer. Damn, that thing could split him in half. What the hell is that? Turning to the boy, swordsman noted that boy's one arm changed in form. He swung his arm, and once again the swordsman had to dodge. If he blocks those strikes from above, it will just bend and break his spine. Damn it. Gritting his teeth, Kaizome Agakuro threw a pair of blades at Izuku, expecting the boy to dodge while he ran at him with a pair of blades. He just needed a bit of blood to immobilize him, that's all. A small scratch would be enough. The boy absolutely ignored the knives as they impacted his body, and swung with the arm that still had a claw. The one that had a worse angle of impact bounced off Izuku's skin. Running on high speeds doesn't allow one to stop immediately. Kaizome tried to slide next to Izuku, but even then he still had to redirect the claw. However, pling. The sword broke after being hit for so many times with boy's claws. Stain managed to save himself with that small sacrifice, and once he was at a good distance again, he grit his teeth. A small amount of blood. That's all I need. He analyzed the boy again. The knife was still inside Izuku's body, who looked like he didn't even feel pain in his pierced shoulder. There was no blood from the injury as well. So you have that type of quirks. Manipulation of your body. And you found quite a scary application of that in form of your organic weapons. Usually people use it to get bigger muscles and strength, both for looks and efficiency. Kaizome mused as he kept his distance. Then, a scratch won't be enough. What I need is... The whip whistled in the air again. Kaizome threw his last blunt sword and quickly got a grip on his knives in pockets on his chest. Something more damaging. Kid will be just fine. Swordsman quickly sidestepped, and as whip was about to hit the ground, he swung his knives as fast as he could. Hearing a satisfying sound of metal cutting through flesh, he knew that he got all he needed. However, The pointy tip of the whip with 3 blades was quickly reconnected to the boy's main body, as the whip became just a bit longer, and smaller versions of the tendrils connected with it. Izuku returned the whip, seeing how he actually has a worse defense this way. Claws worked better for active protection. I apologize, boy. This is where this little fight will end. Jim. What exactly did he mean by that? Did he do something that dash? Calming feeling washed over Izuku, and the stress of the first real battle started to disappear. It seemed that Izuku's body wanted him to be sure that he is focused on the current objective. The swordsman licked his dagger. Izuku prepared for another attack. Prepared. And waited. Kaizomi, however, looked at Izuku with wide eyes. You didn't feel anything. And no. His quirk betrayed him for the first time. No matter who was in front of him, Kaizomi knew that his quirk will work. The only difference is for how long people are affected by his quirk. And then, he felt it. Worlds started spinning around him as his vision became blurry. Izuku still stood ready for an attack when his enemy stumbled in place a bit. What's going on? Kaizomi yelled in his head. His whole body ached, and he felt as his stomach was about to empty itself. Unimaginable headache was splitting his head in half. On sheer willpower, Kaizomi glanced at the boy who looked at him confused. Well, what was dash? He didn't have any strength to say anything. His throat was sore and dry. The man that at some point will be known as Stain did the only thing he could. He ran away. Izuku finally allowed himself to take a breather, as he watched with wide eyes as the man barely disappeared behind a corner. He glanced at the dagger in his shoulder, and with a slight mental signal the injury repaired itself, forcing the dagger out of his body. The event was a bit unexpected, but it seemed that everything worked out. Well, not yet. Even if Izuku managed to protect the man on his back, he still had to bring him to justice. He couldn't do that with the face of a boy, but turning into KM-21 was the only way. A normal person would be shocked by all the events that occurred to him, but to be honest, after the events inside the dome and with whole emotions suppressant in his body, he wasn't that shocked. It felt closer to a complete realization of an event with making some useful conclusions afterwards. But no panic and no fear. Not for long, at least. Knowing that military units shouldn't be that far away from his location, Izuku looked around and made sure that the man was still unconscious. With a steeled expression, he transformed into the Major and put the now released man on his shoulder. Breath in, breath out. The event was unexpected, yes, but now he could rest a bit and think about the situation overall. Izuku managed to dump the man to a pair of patrol soldiers, which gladly neither questioned his rank nor who was he. They knew about the blacklight armor, and doubted that those people would lie about a rapist of all things. Izuku made sure to cover his appearance as well, saying that the man assaulted not only a woman, but a green-haired boy as well. This way, if the man says something about Izuku who went through all the trouble to save him, then he will automatically confirm the claims that he did something with the boy. All in all, the situation was resolved, but Izuku had little doubt that he will be able to use KM-21's looks again. Soon, the news of his disappearance and the description of his face and armor will be known to every military unit in the country. However, there was another topic that plagues Izuku's mind ever since the fight in the dome. Izuku looked at the nicely lit road, and noticed a crosswalk with traffic lights some distance away. Even if I can't feel anything about killing others, I still can't do it. The main and the most obvious reason is that it is looked down upon, especially among heroes. The second reason that is just as obvious. It is illegal. Despite whatever I actually feel, I just have to feel bad about it. It is so obvious. Humans are social creatures. We have to be sad when some of us die. Damn it, the topic confusing to Izuku. Control yourself, control yourself, control yourself. Izuku repeated it like an aria. He clearly has something wrong in his head if that's the way he thinks about killing a person. That emotion suppressant starts to be a bigger problem than the rest of his quirk. At least to his sanity. Izuku sighed. He just needs to stick to the morals and the laws, and everything will be fine. Izuku stood on the crosswalk. He calmly looked at the people on the other side, before a hunching blonde man got his attention. There was nothing special about the man, but Izuku, for some reason, couldn't help but glance at him from time to time. Control yourself, control yourself, control yourself. He mentally repeated and made a calming breath. Once the traffic light showed green, Izuku and other pedestrians started to cross the road. Izuku made another calming sigh, but before he noticed, he was in the middle of the crossroad, passing by the blonde man. Devour. Izuku's eyes widened. Devour. He made a shaking breath and covered his stomach in pain, which the blonde man noticed. Izuku felt how the man was extending his arm towards him. The man was about to ask if Izuku was all right. Devour. Please. Don't touch me. His mental pleas weren't heard. Devour. Why now of all times? Izuku yelled in his head. The man put his hand on Izuku's shoulder. And in the same moment, Boy's eyes rolled up, and black tendrils shot out of his body. Izuku woke up. No, saying it this way can give a wrong idea. He regained his consciousness. He had yet to open his eyes, but that didn't stop him from assessing his current situation. Where am I? It couldn't be his bed. He almost broke the one he had in the refugee center. He couldn't sleep there unless it was replaced with a sturdier one. So that was the first question. Waking up in unknown places with no knowledge about how he got there will become a habit at this rate. Normally, when a person wakes up in an absolutely unknown place, they would panic, at least a little bit. That is the most natural reaction. During sleep, you are in your most vulnerable state, which naturally requires you to do so in the safest place possible. Izuku knew that even he could have panic, just for a short amount of time before it turns off. But he didn't. Then, there was only one explanation. Why are my emotions turned off again? The first time it happened. He almost broke down after the first time he absorbed a carrier inside the dome. Now was the second time it happened on such a big scale. But he wasn't in the dome, he was sure of it. What triggered such a big pile of negative emotions at once for him to lose all his emotions? Second question. He needed to understand his current position. He tried to move his finger. And nothing. Not in a sense that his body lost an ability to move limbs. No, he sent the mental signals that reached its destination. The problem was that his fingers were tied in a fist. Tied, was he kidnapped? Izuku tried to move a limb. One arm, two arms, legs. All of them were immobilized. A straightening jacket of some kind. It was a statement based on the observations, not a guess. His position didn't allow him to do much, but he still could escape if he cuts the straightening jacket by creating blades from his body. Izuku slowly opened his eyes, and seeing a scenery that was clearly built by humans and was still working nicely. His eyes widened in shock. The emotions returned at the same moment. Ignoring the twisted way his body acted for a moment, Izuku tried to move again. His earlier observations were right. He was in a straightening jacket, and he was kidnapped. Or not. The room was a bit empty. It was gray, there was no wallpapers or anything. Beside an uncomfortable bed, there was a large mirror and a door. Izuku looked at his reflection and narrowed his eyes, remembering the last thing he could. There was a crossroad. That blonde man. And then, no. His eyes widened. Did I kill someone? No, I couldn't. I would have their memories inside. I didn't kill anyone. Then where am I? No, why am I here? He was about to break free, but the calmness that spread through his body forced him to make a calming sigh. Focus. I won't let them do anything to me. I can escape at any moment. Should they try to do anything, I'll do what it takes to survive. I will live. But I should understand what I got myself into. The room was so quiet that it got deafening. He needed something. Source of anything around him. Hey! I woke up! He yelled. Whoever has captured him, they could at least be there when he woke up. When the enemy or whoever appears, Then he will decide his next actions. Izuku's ears twitched as he felt the vibrations behind the mirror. Hey, he woke up. The man rubbed his eyes before turning to the door. What's the matter? Was received through the radio. I know that he can't see me, the man looked at Izuku, who was staring back through one-sided mirror. But the boy creeps me out. Can we solve this all faster? I wanna go home. The door opened and two men got inside. The man and the captive looked at those who entered. Though Izuku couldn't see the people themselves. Should I go first? Asked one of two men. No, I should go first. We can't be sure what he will do. The man that was sitting there the whole time shrugged, looking at those two talking. He is a bit creepy, but isn't that a bit of overkill? Sending you, I mean. The bigger of the two rolled his shoulders. He is certainly much sturdier than most, so we need to be prepared. I still hope I can help him a bit though. Don't get me wrong, but didn't that boy attack you a few hours ago? So what? Well, I'm just, saying. Even if not to you, the boy might be dangerous. And well, when one tries to argue with the number one hero, they sure as hell need a better basis for their arguments. All Might coughed a bit, signaling that his time was ticking, but he replied to the ignorant policeman. He is not as dangerous as you think him to be. I would recognize a villain if I saw one. This boy had a mental side effect because of a drug or because of his quirk. And most likely it is the second. In that case, we have a scared boy with equally scary quirk, and he needs help. Why are you so sure about it being a quirk problem, and not drugs? He registered as a refugee a few hours before the incident, said the second man, Detective Tsukachi Naomasa. A bit too fast for an addict to find a source inside a city filled with military and heroes. And, in addition, we checked all the camera footages that captured his face. So we are as sure as we can be. All Might smiled and nodded, but to Naomasa it felt forced. He knew his friend and could see when he was genuine, at least in his facial expressions. He saw that real smile so many times, that even a single irregularity in it can be seen miles away. The detective sighed. He could relate to the big man. The Mizutofu outbreak is already considered to be one of the scariest events in Japan's history, and did not take the first place because of the incredibly fast reaction from the government. In fact, the reaction was so fast that it started to raise questions. The first barricades were set even before the enemy showed its ugly red veins. Naomasa shook his head, as he watched All Might get into the room to talk with the boy he had to fight so long ago. This man saved at least a few thousand people all by himself there, almost flying through the city and getting people out of the worst hotspots while the wall was built. It surely didn't do his health any good. Even then. To All Might it wasn't enough. It couldn't be enough. It doesn't matter how much I saved, Naomasa. I know that I can't save everyone, but to lose so many. I can't help but start counting every person that was almost within my grasp. And now, All Might was doing everything it takes to make sure that his help reaches people. 2 days was enough for Japan to lose 1 million of its citizens, almost 1,000 of soldiers, hundreds of heroes. Cementos, who was the one behind the creation of the dome, was still in coma. And the worst part is that the dome itself is not stable enough, and additional constructions are to be made. A building of such a big scale will just crumble because of its own weight and absence of any support from inside. Luckily, at least UA is still. Shit, dodge. The policeman shouted and quickly hid behind his desk. Naomasa didn't waste any time on questions and did the same. In the next instant, the one-sided armored mirror was broken into pieces. Few seconds earlier, whoever it is, they were coming closer to the door next to the mirror. It was obviously one-sided one. He felt the sources of vibrations on the other side that reacted to his yell. It was a bold move, but it gave its results. Whoever was coming, they were big. He felt those footsteps way before they got into the room behind the mirror. If it was police, they would send someone to talk to him, but they would choose someone not as intimidating. Not this soon, at least. So, was he kidnapped after all? If the guy is just a brute, he will quickly knock him out. Killing is still illegal after all, and run. Now he only needed to. Izuku's eyes widened as he saw the one who entered. All Might. The man's smile softened a bit. Yeah, kid. Surprised. Quite some time you gave me. Of course, Izuku recognized the person that decorated his whole room in Mizutofu. That, however, was not the problem. Danger. Izuku started to mentally tune down All Might as he was saying something. Run. Previously suppressed panic hit him unimaginably hard. Thoughts stopped appearing. Eyes started to jump into every direction before rolling up, as pure instincts took over. Survive. Enemy. Too strong. Deceptive. Little man is the big man. Enemy. Can't win. Must run. Must evolve. Live. Blades tore through the straightening jacket, and not as a human, but as an animal. Izuku sprinted towards the one-sided mirror with as much force as he could. Run. He quickly got through, and then started running towards the door, ignoring two people that were there. He was about to burst through in the next instant, but then... If he were fast enough, sturdy enough, that fist wouldn't matter as much. However, unfortunately, or fortunately after all, he wasn't prepared for what was coming. A powerful punch impacted his body, and the blackness claimed him once more. All Might. Didn't you say that he was just a kid? I felt that punch from here. Naomasa shouted in slight panic, still hidden behind a desk. Don't worry. I told you that he is sturdier than he looks. Last night anything weaker than this didn't have any effect on him. I know what it takes to simply knock him out. All Might lifted Izuku's surprisingly heavy body. I guess we should move him to another cell. Chef's gonna kill me, whined the policeman. Follow me. And don't scare him this time, alright? That was the strongest armored glass we had. The man never imagined lecturing All Might of all people about anything. If he didn't want to sleep so much, he wouldn't be able to think because of the pure excitement. The pair did as they were told on the way. All Might slightly leaned towards Naomasa. Sorry about that. You fine? Yeah, though he tore through that jacket so quickly I barely even had an instant to process it. I thought they were supposed to be quite tough. I was stupefied for a moment as well. When we fought, these spikes of his didn't appear this quickly. Still, this is the second time he reacted on me so violently.